Hi, everybody. Sarah Means. I'm the governor's Workforce, Higher Ed, and Economic Development Advisor. I'm sorry I can't be there in person to join you today, but we wanted to make sure that I was introduced to the group as this is a new role. I'm incoming into this role just a couple weeks ago now, replacing Sarah Foster, who has moved on to another great opportunity in the employment department. So my background, for those that don't know, is generally community and economic development, and have also engaged in the workforce space with the local workforce boards and regions that I've worked in. So very happy to take on this new role and opportunity with the governor. And excited to work with all of you in the consortiums to, progress your, extend and develop your goals in work. I also wanted to give a brief update on the what has been in the news both a couple months ago and then I saw again recently the NVIDIA MOU. I know that is of interest to this group. We don't have a huge update to provide. We're spending the summer engaging in work on that, but did want to make sure that you all were updated, as I'm not sure you've had an update recently. So just to take a step back, the HEC, along with the governor's office and NVIDIA, did sign an MOU that was announced in April. Governor announced that effort. The MOU establishes really a collaborative framework for Oregon and NVIDIA to do a few things. One is to foster entrepreneurship. Another is to expand AI-focused education and skill building to prepare Oregonians for the future. And then also, this MOU really is designed to help state agencies identify ways to responsibly use AI to improve government services. One of the first efforts we plan to launch with the MOU is something called the Ambassador Program. The NVIDIA Ambassador Program supports faculty and researchers at universities and community colleges to get certified to teach AI workshops to their students at no cost. And this is not a program unique to Oregon. There are over 600 university ambassadors at hundreds of institutions around the world. And so this was an important step as part of the MOU to really support the opportunity and bring it here for Oregonians to access. Another piece of the announcement that was made back in April was some funding. So alongside this MOU, the governor directed $10 million in available CHIPS Act funding to support what is called the Oregon Semiconductor Talent Sustaining Fund, and that fund is housed at the HEC. A small portion of this $10 million is going to support the Ambassador Program, and that resource is going directly to universities and community colleges wanting to engage in that work. And then the remaining funds will be held in that fund for other purposes related to the semiconductor talent fund. So we are working closely with the HEC right now on the process for both of those investments, the Ambassador Program and the Talent Sustaining Fund. And we will certainly have more information to share with you in the coming months. And we are excited to be able to do that soon. So with that, I'm going to stop talking now and hope that you heard all of that. Can you hear me now?
Oh, yeah. We can hear you. Can you hear us?
For the first time, yes.
Oh, fantastic. Fantastic. Well, I will just I'll circle back, Sarah. The two questions that we've been discussing, and I took a stab at responding, was that Venkat had expressed that we've heard that the accessibility of the ambassador program, the bar is a bit too high. I'm going to use my own words. And
Sure.
especially for community colleges, and how are we thinking about that? And so I mentioned that we're not only thinking about that, but also accessibility for cross-disciplinary faculty. And then Jeff Rhodes asked if there is a plan in place for expanding beyond community college and university to also include K-12 staff. And I said, I'm not sure that we have a stepwise plan in place, but that the question makes me think that we should be doing that because it is built into the MOU.
Yeah, it
Do we have
certainly
video
is.
for Sarah? Okay, still working on video, so we can't
Yeah,
see you, but we can hear
okay.
you.
I can't see you as well. So we're both in the dark here. That's great. Uh there is K-12 is certainly called out in the MOU, though our initial focus is really at the university and community college level. There is, Jennifer's correct, we haven't gotten to the point where we're talking about a specific plan. For K-12, our focus really has been on university and community colleges at this point in time, and really trying to drill down and understand how we can make it as accessible as possible, given the comments Venkat had mentioned. We want to make sure that we can get as many faculty into this program as want to participate, but we have some work to do there.
Any other, Skip, do you have a question?
Yeah, I was just gonna say that if I can be helpful through TAO and also getting out more messaging about the MOU, and because there was a little bit I noticed in some different threads with the startup community looking at the reporting, it's made it sound like the state was giving 10 million to NVIDIA
Yeah.
and for the program, and I was like, oh, come on, Oregonian, and a bunch of other publications like, and by the way, NVIDIA's market cap was 4 trillion recently. It's like next sentence down. So I think what's really helpful is you laid it out really concisely around here's where the funding is going. It's already committed CHIPS Act funding, first off. Secondly, it's going to support the development of infrastructure to help set up ambassadors with Oregon-based, higher ed institutions, et cetera. So if there's any sort of help that we can provide on the messaging side, I'm happy to do like a LinkedIn post or, some other combination of things in the next week. So happy to work with you offline on that.
Thanks, Skip. I do appreciate that, and appreciate your interpretation there. Let's talk offline. I would like to noodle on how we might be able to address some of that.
Cool. Sounds good.
Hi, Sarah. This is Courtney.
Oh,
can
great.
you hear me okay?
Yes.
Hi, this is Courtney from Intel. I know you said that with the team at the HEC, still looking at the remainder of the funds in the Semiconductor Talent Sustaining Fund. Any early thoughts on how that may be used, or just your ideal timeline of when that might roll out?
Yeah, and Jennifer is perhaps even a better person to address this, as she and her team are working on it more directly than I am at this point. But the bill that established the Talent Sustaining Fund did provide some sideboards, and those are definitely being recognized. I think we've gone through and identified some sort of values around how we would like to see the funds used. None of that will be shocking or surprising, certainly in alignment with existing plans that have already been sort of developed and vetted. Certainly collaborative spirit with those that are applying. We have a strong ecosystem here in Oregon, and we want to continue to support that. In terms of timeline, I think an ideal timeline would certainly be moving on those in the next month or two. I don't want to get too specific because there is a lot of moving parts behind the scenes, but definitely in the next month or two, I would hope that we have something more tangible to share with the broader community around the fund.
And I might just add, thanks, Sarah. We've been working closely with the governor's office around not only the statutory requirements of the Semiconductor Talent Sustaining Fund, but also the fact that these are Oregon CHIPS Act funds, and making sure that there's alignment there. The Semiconductor Talent Sustaining Fund does point specifically to the Semiconductor Talent Assessment that was published a year and a half ago. Yeah, something like that, and also points to this group, the Technology Industry Consortium and the Manufacturing Industry Consortium, as priority setting bodies, and we also acknowledge that there is an active Semiconductor Industry Consortium led by Oregon Business Council, and HEC's been actively engaged with that work as well. So I think in terms of timeline, Sarah's spot on. We anticipate that we'll have some sort of guiding principles and approach to share more broadly in the next month or two, and then that would put us in the fall for having an opportunity available. But you all will be actively engaged in that work, so know that you'll have line of sight to those next steps when they're available. Thanks so much, Sarah.
Yeah, I apologize. I have to get out the door for my next commitment, but thanks for having me. Sorry about the tech issues, but it was great to virtually meet you all, even though I can't see you.
It's sort of my fault because I said something about the tech being great. And so you never do that till the end of the meeting,
Yeah,
right?
right. Yeah.
So I take full responsibility for that.
Well,
Thank you for joining us, Sarah.
Enjoy Pendleton, everybody.
Yeah, we are. Okay, so those of you following along the agenda, we just passed through the public comment time, but we had no one online for public comment, so I think we're good. The next thing on the agenda is approving those minutes, and I want to direct all of you to these cards that you're all familiar with now. Should all have them by your folders here. We emailed you the minutes, I think, a couple of weeks ago. So if you just take a moment and glance through the minutes in your folder. Oh, what's up, doctor? Oh, okay. 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 I was just expecting the worst. I'm sorry. So if you'd all take a minute and look at a moment and look at your minutes, and then we can take a vote on them.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Courtney Lee. I manage the Northwest for the state and local public policy team at Amazon Web Services. It's our pleasure to be here today. This is a really exciting topic for us to talk about. As a public policy manager, I cover everything from AI and privacy to energy, water, land use, anything that encompasses our data center operations out here in Eastern Oregon. Today's agenda says AI overview, and I think that could take like 8 hours to do. So I think we're going to push that to another time. But I did want to kick off this panel, as it's very important, and give sort of a background on how we got here as AWS. As you probably drove through on 84, you passed several data centers on the way in. Those are AWS data centers. AWS has invested over $40 billion since 2011 in Eastern Oregon. We have hired and retained jobs around 8,300. We've contributed to the local GDP. We are very invested in the community and want to meet the community where it is. So Umatilla and Morrow counties, we have really worked hard to develop workforce development programs, as you'll hear about shortly, but also think big spaces, and we build it better programs and fusion splicing programs, you name it. We're really trying to be very innovative to upskill and reskill the next generation of data center workers and tech workers. In Umatilla and Morrow counties, we have Think Big Spaces, which allow K through 8, sometimes 12, to experiment with robots, 3D printers. We also have a Think Big Space at the Confederated Tribes of the Umatilla Indian Reservation that allow a focus on their first foods and preserving their dialect on the cloud, which is great. As our society continues to use technology on an hourly, minute-by-minute basis, data centers are so critical. And as we talk about AI doesn't happen without data centers. So really glad to be here to talk through how we are reskilling and upskilling our workers in Eastern Oregon and how we partner with folks like BMCC to develop those programs. So we'll turn it over to them as they're the experts.
All right, good morning, everybody. My name is Jesus Casas. I am AWS, what we call an area manager, so I am a manager of managers. I'm very excited to be here. Thank you for the opportunity. I want to talk a little bit about the opportunities that we have currently in AWS, but also what we plan to hire by the end of the year of 2025. So far right now, we have 118 open recs within the Eastern Oregon. Morrow County, Umatilla County. So we have 118 open recs. By the end of the year, we are planning to hire another 185 employees. So that is what we have open right now. I also want to talk to you guys about what we've done with the BMCC. Of course, Peter is here. So we've in 2022 we came together. AWS was having a hard time basically identifying employees that could do the role that we needed to do at the time, which was something that we call the data center engineer and operations technicians. So in 2022, we connected with BMCC, and we wanted to make changes to how we basically allow people to come into the data centers and be able to do the job that we need them to do to be able to maintain these data centers. So we came up with the curriculum. We worked together to put the curriculum together and presented this to AWS. Even though I was AWS at the time, we had to present it to the people that were working with us, right? And we presented this program that was basically aligned with the jobs that we had open at the time. So took us about 3 months, maybe 4 months. We came up with this curriculum and we rolled it out in 2022. As of now, this is the 3rd year that we run with that. So I'm very proud of that. Out of that program, we've actually had a total of 81 employees that have attended the program, and 57 of them graduated successfully. So I'm very proud to say that we've accomplished that. So also by the end of the year of 2025, we are projected to have hired hundreds of employees in the Umatilla and the Morrow County. So thank you once again, BMCC, for helping us with this. Something else that I want to cover today is one of the objectives that we have been working with BMCC. We don't just hire AWS employees. We also work with a lot of different vendors. We have to build these data centers. We have to power those data centers. We have to maintain those data centers. We have to operate them as well, right? So it's not just employees for AWS that we are bringing to the Umatilla and the Morrow County. We're also working with a lot of different vendors that are even outside of this area, like they're coming from Seattle, from the Portland area, and they're coming here to provide a service to AWS so we can service our customers, right? So those are some of the roles that we have open and what we're doing with BMCC. And then I want to talk a little bit about what we've done for BMCC, working together with them, right? So in 2022, we were only allowed, we only had the capacity to bring 24 students to do the training that we wanted to get done with BMCC. So in 2023, we donated $150,000 so that we can bring more capacity and allow for more students to be able to participate in this program. So we work very closely with BMCC. We donated that, so the following year, we went from 24 to 37 students that we could bring into this program. So right now, that is the capacity that we have. I think 2024, we had 30 plus students that attended the program. And another thing that we did was we donated some equipment that we had that was decommissioned from the data center so that they could use to actually have hands-on training for these technicians that were going through the program. Something else that we were able to accomplish in 2023 was we received some feedback from the students saying like, hey, so some of the training that we're doing right now is not relevant to what we do in the data centers. So I was able to work closely with Pete's team, and we were able to do a tour of the data center so we can showcase the equipment that we have physically at the data centers. And the training was going to be tailored to the equipment that we have. So we accomplished that. We came back, we went to the drawing board again, and we came up with a curriculum. We basically modified it to make sure that it made sense. We added a few things, removed a few other things that didn't make sense at the time. and we're here now. We've our third year, looking forward to the fourth year, and we are very excited to be able to work with you guys.
I think Juan's going to speak last. I'm Pete Hernberg. I teach math and computer science at BMCC, and I'm going to talk a little bit about, you heard about the first program we offer, which is in partnership with Amazon Web Services, their upskilling program. That's a program that takes current AWS employees and prepares them for engineering operations roles. So these are roles where they'll work on the electrical, mechanical, HVAC systems inside the data centers, the critical systems that keep the data centers running 24/7. The second program that we offer is the Data Center Technician Program. So that's a one-year certificate program that prepares students for technology roles in the data center. So students that work on the server, networking equipment, the hardware, and troubleshooting that equipment, preparing it, keeping it running 24/7. So how that program came about was we were approached by Amazon Web Services in 2015. And they said that they were planning to build a lot of data centers. Boy, has that been true. You never know when an employer comes to you and says, we're really going to be growing and we're going to be a big thing. You hope that that's true, but you never know if it's true. But boy, that's really been true. So in 2015, when we were approached by them, they expected that they would need many, many technicians to staff these data centers. And I'd had some experience in a similar but failed effort in Prineville to develop a program. And I was very eager that time to try again and make it a success. And so we worked very closely with the managers at Amazon Web Services to understand what is their day-to-day work, what sort of tasks they perform, and what would a curriculum look like that we could launch as quickly as possible and prepare students for entry-level roles in the workforce as quickly as possible. And what we ended up with was a one-year certificate, the Data Center Technician Certificate at Blue Mountain Community College. And we developed that program in about 6 months. And our goal in that program, it's run 10 times now. I actually looked it up before this talk and I was shocked. But our goal in that program is to get students from potentially not having any technology experience to working in a data center in just 6 months. So a one-year certificate in the community college world, that means 3 college terms. For us, that's typically fall, winter, and spring. Those first 2 terms, fall and winter, students take intensive hands-on lab classes. Students will do some reading and some lecture material on their own time, but our focus in the classroom is really on those sorts of hands-on training that we can't do anywhere else. And we want to respect students' time because often our students, especially our best students, already have jobs. They're already working. So we want to make sure that we respect that time and keep it to hands-on. And then the final term, so the first 2 terms are hands-on classes, but the final term, the spring term, is a work experience. Our goal is that if a student starts the program in September, that they're going to be applying for jobs in February and March, and we're hoping they're hired in April. It doesn't always work out exactly that way, but I can say that the happiest part of my job is coming in, and you're going to hear from Juan shortly, who's one of our alumni from last year's cohort, is coming in and hearing that they've gotten hired. So my dean asked me in May what our job placement rate was for our third-term students, and at that time it was 80-something%. We still had 2 students looking for jobs, but I'm proud to report that as of June, we actually got that to 100%. So 100% of our students were able to find job placements. 2 years ago, we had an 80% job placement rate, and sorry, a year ago we had an 80% job placement rate, and 2 years before that we had a 100% job placement rate. In many years, not every year, but in many years, we get to a point where we have to tell recruiters that we don't have any more students that we can refer them because all of our students have found job placements. And again, for me as a community college instructor, that's the happiest thing I get to do. And I'm looking forward to you getting the chance to hear from Juan about his experience in the program and his experience launching his career. But I did want to publicly thank Amazon Web Services for all the things that they've done to support the program. First of all, just I think that the way that they've helped us understand what the needs are, what the job looks like, not in the abstract, but really what it looks like in terms of day-to-day, what it would look like to have those skills at the most basic level that you could get hired at, and then learn some on the job as well. But also very material support. So Jesus mentioned the huge equipment donation. Again, we really can't, we try to run our programs on duct tape and baling wire, but there's some things that we just can't do unless we have the equipment. So those kinds of donations make a huge difference because we just don't have the budget for it. In addition to that, AWS provides $100,000 per year in scholarships. The typical scholarship award for students is $10,000. And students almost always get the scholarship if they apply for it. I can't say they always get it, but they almost always get it. And what that means is, of course it helps them with tuition, fees, books, but really what it does is it allows them to focus on their studies as full-time students without as much of a worry about how they're going to pay rent, how they're going to pay gas. And that's something that I really see in the classroom, and it really makes a difference for our students, and I'm immensely grateful for it. But honestly, the thing I'm most grateful for is just the career opportunities. The really great joy of my life in this program is that I get to see students go from working at a gas station to advancing in a career. That's the coolest thing I get to do. And so I'm going to turn it over to Juan, who's one of our alumni for this year.
Okay. Hello and good morning, everyone. My name is Juan Rodriguez Ochoa, and as many of you have heard by now, I am this year's recent graduate class for the Data Center Technician program. And as Pete mentioned, I do come from a background that doesn't immediately relate to tech. Before working within AWS, I was originally working 2 jobs while doing the program. I was originally working at a Subway and at a liquor store in Bournemouth. And I do have to say that having to combine the both into my schedule was a little tricky, but it was manageable. And I will have to say it was absolutely 100% worth every last second that I put into this program, that it'd be spending sometimes countless hours trying to solve an issue that everyone was having within the class on some big assignment that we might have had, or let it be trying to figure out how to put in the study time for the materials and the lectures that we had gone through for the week. I will say as well that that the program has also allowed me to really find my interest in what kind of careers I really want to pursue, especially in opening doors and allowing me to network and connect with people. Seeing as the data center program not only goes over computer hardware, but it also goes over different Linux distribution system, computer hardware, computer systems. It goes over networking, different forms of networking, everything that goes into networking. There'd be VLANs, IP addressing, and even knowing how to maybe try and calculate an IP address. And as a result, over time, I was able, with the material I learned in class and the work I was putting into my assignments, I was very quickly able to connect dots from point A to point B to point C to point D. And over time went from trying to memorize and study material and then eventually actually put it into work, which has resulted in, I want to say possibly being the first student of my class to be hired and to start working for AWS. Of course, I'd like to give Pete a big thank you, and to my other professors who did an amazing job of making sure I was always on track and always made sure I was up to date with all the material that we were studying that week, in, whatever it may have been in class. And so far, I'd say that this program is possibly one of the best things that could have happened to me, seeing as at the moment I am a network technician, but due to the material that I've studied in class and what the program has taught me, I can possibly go into computer hardware maintaining it, troubleshooting it, and so on and so forth. And yeah, that's about it.
Happy to take any questions you have about the program or about AWS. Turning it over to you all.
Does anybody else have a question? Yeah, go ahead. I don't need to go first. Is there?
They'll be grateful for that. Yeah, no, right? I just wanted to quickly statement or a comment and then a question as well. Juan, I want to just say to you, thank you so much for coming and sharing your story and being willing to talk about the success you've had already as you're kind of embarking on this career path. And Pete, I think that connection between higher education or education generally and the practical business connection, that partnership that can exist to bring real world sort of relevant and timely applicable skills that are necessary. Just kudos to you and to the team at AWS for partnering with Blue Mountain on that. And I think it's just fantastic. It's a great success story thus far. My question really is, first, how many other schools here, colleges, have a certificate program similar to this? And are you getting inquiries, folks knocking on your door to find out about replicating it? That's one. The other one is whether or not this is just part and parcel of how AWS does business. I know that, for example, Intel engages in the metro area and around the state with their Quick Start program. And so there are different models that exist where technology companies are really investing in the community, your own workforce, but also just the overall economy of the place. And I just want to thank you for that. So the question really is about other places that have certificates and whether this is something AWS is replicating in other locations. So I'm not aware of other schools in the state that offer it. The other place where I know that there are hyperscaler data centers are in Prineville, Oregon. And so there may be something at COCC there, I'm not sure. And then also Google's in so Apple and Facebook are in Prineville, Google's in the Dalles. But as far as I know, our program was the first in the nation as a data center technician program. And I've spoken with folks in Washington State, in Ohio, in Arkansas, and Virginia. I'm not aware of other similar offerings in Oregon, but that might just be my ignorance.
And to follow up, this is how we operate. This is how we do business. We want to make sure that when we come to a region and develop our data centers, that we reskill and upskill folks here, so we don't have to, bring folks in. We want to make sure to meet the community where they are, and to really make sure that folks who have been born and raised here can stay here and make very good paying jobs.
That was my question, is what's the average wage of this technician work, and then what's the cost of the tuition for the certificate?
Do you have the average wage?
So that's a great question. Thanks for asking that. So it depends. We have, once again, so many different jobs within a data center. So we could go between $20 an hour to $50 an hour. Depends the job that you have. It just probably, I'm not allowed to say exact numbers, but that's a ballpark depending on the job.
For this certificate program, someone's prepared then for that range?
So the one for the data center, that one would be between a $25 to a $35 an hour. Yeah. And something I do want to add, because I want to go back to the question that you had, Jeff, about the are we replicating this anywhere else? So last year we connected with CBC from Tri-Cities, because we've got some feedback from technicians that live in the Washington area. So that's something that is being looked at, but there's nothing that has been completed for that. That's the only place that we're looking to replicate right now.
One other thing you had asked about tuition. So for the one-year certificate, the data center technician certificate, I don't have the exact figures, but for all tuition fees and textbooks, everything, it would be on the order of $8,000 for the whole year. That's the fully loaded cost. And again, the typical scholarship award, and almost everyone who applies for a scholarship gets a scholarship, is $10,000. For the upskilling program that Jesus discussed, those are AWS employees, and AWS pays all tuition and fees, books, everything for those students.
Quick follow-up to that. Does AWS pay that to BMCC, or is that a student award for the upskilling?
It is paid to BMCC, so there's some stuff that happens on the back end where basically we sort of exchange lists of students, and then once everything's sorted out, AWS pays BMCC.
We found, I'm thinking about one of Mount Hood Community College's programs, and one of the barriers that they've overcome is by employers paying the fees directly to the college. And that model seems to be working, as opposed to like a tuition reimbursement model where a student has to upfront the cost. So thank you.
Yeah, I should mention probably, sing Amazon's praises, but this is a national program for all Amazon employees that they can have. This is not just in Oregon, not just here, but all over the nation. They can get their tuition and fees paid.
I'm curious to know your thoughts because as we build out these AI factories, of which AI data centers are a big part, there is a 20-to-1 shortage of skilled workforce, of a skilled workforce to build these AI factories, because we need plumbers, because most of these are liquid cooled systems now, and then HVAC technicians, welders, etc. So, and this gap of 20-to-1 is only going to grow as we build out more of these. So what do you think should be the area of focus to get more people interested in the skilled trades? And what is working? How can we scale this from a policy perspective?
Those sound like questions that Courtney would be better equipped to answer, but I'm an academic, so I'm going to give you my opinion anyways. You know, I mean, the great thing about, you know, the boom in hiring is that it makes me look very good. I don't have to be a very good teacher. We don't have to have very good programs because our students get hired because there's such tremendous demand. Now, we work very hard to try and make sure our students genuinely are prepared for the workforce. And so I think as much as possible to focus on training students in career and technical programs for the jobs that are actually there. So that means, number one, looking at the numbers and the geography of where those jobs actually are, where there actually are sufficient openings, and being really honest about what those are and where they're at, and not, you know, building castles in the sky. And then the second thing is being very focused on what the day-to-day work is and what the bars you need to clear for training students for those entry-level roles. And so, again, these are questions that I'm going to hand it over to Courtney because she actually understands this stuff and can talk about the policy aspects. But to me, that's where the focus must be.
I think that was a great response. But I actually was on a Washington data center work group this morning, actually talking about the same thing. I think everyone is trying to wrap their arms around how do we address workforce issues, to develop data centers, to have that AI leadership in the US versus outside of the US, maintaining that competitive edge. So I think from a public policy perspective, we're also just trying to figure out what that looks like. We understand the value of the workforce, and it goes back to, you know, laying a subsea cable to get the connections to where we need it to. It's building transmission lines to ensure we have clean energy to meet our state's clean energy goals and our company energy goals. So it's a whole picture of how do we bring on more electricians? How do we bring on those plumbers? I mean, I think we're all just trying to grapple with it. And if you have policy ideas, I'm all ears. But definitely look forward to working with the governor's office and hopefully you all on how to handle that. I wish I had the answer.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, just building on that, and Juan, I don't know if you can share from your experience, but I know we spend a lot of time talking about how to demystify the industry. What are these jobs as part of recruiting students in? So I don't know if you can share a little bit more from your personal experience based on where you were working prior to the program, how you learned about it, how you're advertising it, how are you filling the seats in the program, just anything else from a very tactical perspective you can share on that, I think would be insightful.
Um, not too long before I had graduated high school, I was looking around, trying to see what to do afterwards. Thinking about, I'd say okay, pretty much everything I've done. I passed all my classes, good grades, had gone, had placed pretty high in everything in my high school graduating class, and I remember towards the end of my junior year, I had gone to I don't remember exactly what it was, but it was like some kind of workforce training meeting, and that's how I had heard about AWS. Oh, there we go. So I had gone to a workforce meeting where I had learned about AWS originally, and that's when they had brought up that BMCC had a program where as soon as I had graduated, I could go into it, so I didn't have to go, say, so far out all the way to Pendleton, and I could stay happily living in Boardman and not have to travel so far out to get into the program and study for it. And more so going into my senior year, I made sure to pretty much apply, ask more questions about it, go to many more different meetings where I had heard that it would get mentioned and brought up so I could get more and more info on it, more insight on it. And pretty much because beforehand I did have a tiny bit of tech experience, some hands-on troubleshooting with some family, some friends, some people I knew who might have had tech-related issues, troubleshooting. Yes, finding a solution, finding the root cause of the problem, thinking why, and then, hopefully being able to come up with a solution that if something went wrong, what to do, what to help them with. And I only knew that me graduating high school, I wanted to do something technical, something that could be hands-on possibly, and thus me having insight on the BMCC data center technician program towards the very end of my senior year, I had known, I was like, yeah, this is what I want to do. This is going to possibly help me not only get a career that I'm greatly interested in, but then help open doors further down for greater roles and to do just so much more.
The only thing I'd add to that is just, my program depends on word of mouth for recruiting. And so we really depend on our students getting hired and telling their friends.
Representative Bobby Levy would be very happy that I'm plugging her event today and tomorrow, but she has an Eastern Oregon Economic Summit today and tomorrow. And if you're interested in doing a data center tour, we're actually doing a virtual reality data center tour at our booth tomorrow all day. So feel free to stop by Wild Horse Casino and Resort and do a virtual reality data center tour. I can neither confirm nor deny. Probably not.
I think one of my questions builds on this conversation. I'm curious, in this region, employment numbers, what's current employment, what's projected employment, and then on the BMCC side, what does enrollment look like? Can you tell us a little bit about the numbers?
Yeah, of course. So in Morrow, Umatilla County, I'm just going to touch broadly. We've created and retained 8,300 jobs over the last 15 years, but we'll turn it over to Jesus to talk about that as well.
Yeah, so just to make sure I understand your question. So you want to know in the upcoming years per year around how many people will hired? Is that what the question is? So I would say I'm not able to say exact numbers, but I will tell you this year it is a little bit upwards from 400 people that we've hired, so more than that. In the next few years, we are based on the growth that we have right now is going to be about the same number. So more than 400 people per year that we'll be needing to be able to staff these data centers and maintain them. Also, this is not counting for the vendors that we need to do the maintenance every so often that we have to do it. So this is just employees for AWS. So there's a lot more than just AWS that we will need help with right now.
And that's specific to Umatilla and Morrow
That
counties?
is correct.
Okay.
Umatilla and
Okay.
Morrow, yeah.
Okay, great. And then at BMCC, what is the enrollment in the data center technician certificate program? Are there barriers to recruitment or retention, or do most folks who enter the program complete the program?
So, sure, I'll give my best sort of rough caricature. Jesus talked to you about the upskilling program that's current AWS employees. That started out as 2 cohorts of 12 each, so 24 students a year. Because of their equipment donation, we've been able to increase that to 2 cohorts of 18 students, so that's a total of 36 students per year in the upskilling program. We'll typically have a couple of non-AWS employees who are enrolled in those same classes. In the data center technician program, the 1-year certificate program that I developed with AWS that prepares them for the IT roles, we have the capacity to take 20 students per year. Most years we've built that program. Last year I think we had 17 students enroll. For the upskilling program, we'll typically have pretty low, we'll have great retention of students. So we tend not to lose very many students. In my program, we'll typically lose a couple students in the fall and a couple students in the winter. Let's say maybe 85 or 90% term for retention for those first 2 terms. But what I tell the students is, if you just stick around, we have an extraordinary rate of students getting hired. And so, it's not a program. In my other life, I also teach calculus classes, and in calculus, it's sort of like there's a bar, right? And you got to get to the bar, and you got to clear the bar, and otherwise you don't pass the calculus class. But in this program, you show up every day, and you do the work. My promise is you will pass. And so we are not trying to weed out students. And so I hope we can improve our retention rates.
Do you have concerns about recruitment into the program? You mentioned it's primarily word of mouth. Obviously, in the upskilling program, you have sort of a captive audience, and I would assume AWS is doing some promotion around those opportunities. But in recruiting new workforce entrants, are you or is AWS working in K-12 or other community organizations where you're able to promote the opportunity?
So AWS has been incredibly gracious, and so when people are looking for jobs but they don't yet have the skills, they have been incredibly gracious in referring students to us. What we strive to do is be recruiting year-round, even though our program starts once a year, and just making sure we get that contact info, make sure we get students' names, email addresses, phone numbers year-round, with a promise that as soon as we open up applications for the program, as soon as we open up scholarship applications, they'll get information about dates for applying, deadlines, things like that, so that they know they have that promise that they're going to get it. And then over time, we've built up a huge list of prospective students, and in some cases, it's now alumni because we want our alumni to know we're recruiting, not because we want them to come back, but because we want them to tell their friends. And so typically, that's what our recruitment looks like, is gathering contact information throughout the year, and then some email and text message blasts to let students know that the program is open for enrollment. Here's how to apply for scholarships. Here's the important dates, things like that.
But that generally relies on people coming to the college and expressing interest in the program, there aren't any relationships where you're sort of doing that active
I
outreach?
do go out to K-12, so I go out to high schools in the area. So I'll go out to high schools in Portman and Hermiston, try to meet students there and speak to some of the advisors there. But yeah, it's mostly students coming to us, and we really trade on our reputation.
Great.
With the school districts as well. Like I mentioned, we have a Think Big Spaces across the two counties, but we also have Girls Tech Day to start getting young ladies excited to work in the tech industry as well. So we do some marketing on our end just by providing an opportunity to learn more about tech.
Are you implementing any strategies that are outside of the high school system to recruit folks that may be doing a career change or are maybe 30 or 40 and up?
We work with a lot of public sector entities, like state agencies, on upskilling and reskilling their current workforce to work in the cloud and get excited about innovation in the cloud. To my knowledge, not really, but I will get back to you on that. We should.
Okay, if there are no more questions, that was fabulous. I appreciate you all being here. I loved learning. It was amazing. Thank you so much, all of you, for taking time out of your day to be here. I appreciate it. Yeah. So next up, we have David and Elaine from GoSTEM. And I think David will lead and provide sort of an overview of what GoSTEM is, and then Elaine's going to talk about the specific work.
So my name is David Melville, and I'm the Executive Director of the Greater Oregon STEM Hub. Elaine Swanson is here with me, and I will pass the mic to her in just a moment. I think we're yeah. I know that Elaine has a lot to talk about, so I want to just very quickly do an introduction of GoSTEM and the STEM Hub Network. Oregon's regional STEM Hub Network covers the entire state. We are the yellow section on the right. We cover 7 Eastern Oregon counties across 38,000 square miles. We're the largest geographic STEM hub in the state, and the hub network is supported by Oregon Department of Education, a number of other granting entities, and then with support from Oregon STEM. Deb Mumhill, who is on this work group, is also part of, is the executive director for Oregon STEM. Major primary efforts for the STEM Hub Network is focused on K-12 STEM and career-connected learning in each of our regions, as well as professional development for educators. A little bit about GoSTEM. We have an amazing team, like you will see with Elaine, of specialists across the K-12 spectrum, preparing students as a funnel into pathways for their careers in the future. Some of our primary flagship programs include, we have a mobile maker lab program that is basically takes the show on the road, brings it around to different corners of our region. Think of it a classroom on wheels with all the fun STEM activities. We conduct educator externships every summer, as well as student internships with the Workforce Board here, Eastern Oregon Workforce Board. We have Eastern Oregon Works. We conduct an equity review for the Patterns High School Science for All project, which is through ODE's RAP project. And that is a digital and rural equity review on that science curriculum, and very excited to be part of that project. We also house the Oregon Mathways Project coordinator for the state, which is an Oregon Department of Education project that focuses on +1 and high school and college coursework for math. We have dived pretty heavily into literacy and STEM literacy with the governor's initiatives and trying to really stay afloat or ahead of the curve with that as well. We have an extensive lending library, so teachers can come and borrow materials from our lending library if they don't have the materials needed to do STEM in their personal classrooms or at community events. We are housed at Eastern Oregon University, and we are in the College of Education and are working with Outdoor School at OSU and the College of Education at EOU to conduct and build out the first and only outdoor school certificate. So educators practicing or pre-service can come take coursework with us and become certified to go and teach outdoor school. Additionally, we have a community science project is supported by AWS. They are one of our funders, and it focuses on bringing youth and community members out into their waterways, doing data exploration and research in our water systems. And then we also have our 4th grade STEM kits. Every year we send 2,200 STEM kits, individual kits to every 4th grader in our region, and that is funded by AWS as well. Has been an excellent collaborator there. And then everything we do is career-connected learning. So the 4th grade STEM kits, they have a career component. Our mobile maker lab, every event that we do there has a career component to it. One of them is biomedical engineering, and so, you know, putting on that science hat as a biomedical engineer, what does that look like? How do we go from kindergarten of supporting sea life appendages into human applications as we progress up and through high school? So with all of that, I really want to say super excited to be here and to introduce Elaine. And I'm going to read her bio here so I don't mess it up. Elaine was raised in Sumter and Baker City area and comes from a gold mining family. After graduating from Baker High in 2009, Elaine spent 6 years farming through an international farm trade program before entering her bachelor's degree in mathematical biology and botany from Oregon State University in 2022. She went on to complete her master's in applied computation at Harvard in 2024. Her work connects agriculture, data science, and mathematics in the natural world. We are super excited to have her expertise in developing the workforce of Eastern Oregon and her expertise in AI and machine learning. So I'll pass it to Elaine.
Hello, everyone. Can I turn it up a bit, or is this good? Okay. Yeah, so I joined GoSTEM back in March part-time when I was still working for Harvard University. I was a part of the federal firings through the USDA. Scrambled a bit, didn't know what to do. I hop on Baker Herald's, online newspaper and saw a press release from Eastern Oregon University, applied, and that happened really quick. So for all the federal firing stories out there, mine was probably one of the best. So I'm very grateful. Eastern Oregon really came through for me when I needed it. So it was about a month before I actually moved to DC. So luckily everything sort of happened before I changed my life too drastically. So I haven't really been home, like lived in Eastern Oregon since 2009, since I graduated high school. So it's familiar, yet, strange being back, but I'm really grateful to be home, and I just want to be most useful wherever I am. So I feel like they're putting me to very good use at EOU and GoSTEM. So it's pretty fitting that AWS went before me. A lot of the work that I do in AI is on agriculture. I actually did my master's thesis at Harvard on Eastern Oregon agriculture and irrigation. A little later, I'm going to be talking about irrigation districts. I think this is one of the areas one of the fields for our area that is going to be very, very important in terms of workforce development. And that's a small subset of the agricultural field in general. In GoSTEM's areas that we cover, those 7 counties, about 65% of our agricultural producers are 55 years or older. And so what we're seeing is there's a term called the rural brain drain. Kids grow up in these areas, we go out, we go get college educations, and then we go to cities because that's where the money is. So we're actually seeing a lot of people come back, with remote culture in the workplace and then contributing to their communities in that way. But when I was at Harvard and I was doing my thesis, Harvard's cluster is all run with AWS on the back end. So all the results of my thesis, AI is just syntax and math unless it's trained somewhere. So like she was saying, there is no really AI without large data centers to process it and compute it at a large scale. So what I'm going to be going over today is the grant and sort of what my job description is and what have I done so far. So there are two sort of pathways with my grant. One is in educator training and curriculum development, and then the other one is going into high schools and grade schools, middle schools, and working with students on place-based education for agriculture. So we'll start with educator training and development. So I am building out a regional educator capacity to foster AI-based conversations in classrooms and communities. So I really want to prepare educators in our area that if students come to them with questions, how do they have more of a more in-depth conversation? It's ChatGPT. One of the things I want to focus on is AI beyond the chatbot. I think ChatGPT really took over, a pretty good market share, being the first out there back in 2022. But how do we talk about AI without talking about necessarily a chatbot? How is this going to be impacting, especially our farmers' lives and our irrigators' lives? And so I like to present the ChatGPT as more of like a proof of concept. Really, what ChatGPT is doing is predicting the next word that's coming up through a method called tokenization. So instead of thinking about, okay, the actual words that it's predicting, what about imagery? What about just tabular data in general? So if it's that good at predicting, and you can actually have a conversation with it, what kind of other conversations can we be having in different formats? And then we're going to do a little preview of what we're talking about. So use the train the trainer model to prepare educators in delivering AI-powered localized lesson plans. We really want to bring place-based education here. So adapting to the situation, but it's only working if it's built on data that, how do I say this? It won't work unless it's impervious to flaws, but that won't happen. So that's why I have a little qualm with AI. Okay, is it time? All right. Time for the pop quiz. You won't get any points taken off if you get it wrong. Okay, the year of the first published paper on what we'll call AI. So ChatGPT came out November 2022. The ChatGPT 2 was available through APIs for developers, but it didn't have like a user interface for the public. So ChatGPT 3.5 is what really took off, and that's what everyone sort of thinks like, it's here now, it's this huge boom. And so 2022 sort of marks like on the public side of things when it really got into people's faces. But this has a long history, and I am curious. So this is the first neural net architecture ever drawn in a published paper. And I'm curious, and I'm going to write them down just because I like fielding the years. If people could just give me their best guesstimates. There's no date in the past, that's too far for guesses. So let's just see. And we're not going to do price of right rules, so whoever's closest is closest. Okay, so don't be shy, give me your best guesstimates. Right. ChatGPT came out 2022. When was the first published paper on neural network architecture? Come on. 1945. 1970. There was another one. 1951. Any other guesses? Let's get two more. Ooh, 1891. Anybody else? One more. David already knows he can't do it. I know. Looking at you. How about back there? 1600. Oh, I was hoping someone would go that far back. 1600. Awesome. All right. Any more guesses? Okay. It's a wild paper. I really recommend reading it. Are you ready? 1943, Kyle. You were. Oh, wait. Lisa, there you go. You got it. Was there anything that made you say 1945 or? Right. Yeah. So definitely war efforts, you know, they pushed this field to be developed a little closer. It's a fascinating paper by two people who are really interesting. It's McCullough and Pitts. They followed up this paper. This is called A Logical Calculus of Nervous Activity. This drawing is one of 9, and I said that there are 9 intelligences, and they drew 9 things. Coincidence? Yes, but it's still cool. And they had a seminal paper that was a follow-up to this called the What the Frog's Eye Tells the Frog's Brain, or What the Frog's Brain Tells the Frog's Eye. And that they were putting little probes in frogs and actually marking neural activity based on the signals that the eye was sending to the frog's brain. So 1943, that's like 82 years ago. So how did we get from this small paper and these two scientists, nobody really believed them. Pitts, unfortunately, went very hermit and sort of had a sad ending. So a lot of the mathematicians, they have some fascinating stories. But how did we go from 1943 to 2022 where we can have a user-based functional AI system? So the next step was in 1956. The field actually got together and coined a term. So the first conference was at Dartmouth in New Hampshire. And this is where they actually said, okay, we are working on the field of artificial intelligence. So an actual community was built and brought together researchers to research this. And then 1980s machine learning, that is what it's really starting to evolve, and all the key algorithms are developed. So decision trees, those are a huge step forward in machine learning. And then 2012, a lot of the time this is referred to as the breakthrough year. This is where an architecture called AlexNet, it won the ImageNet challenge. So ImageNet was a data set of 14 million labeled image data. So like I said, all this stuff relies on really good and accurate data. And AlexNet won the challenge and it knocked all the other competitors out of the park. It wasn't even a question. And so that architecture helped inform ChatGPT. It helped inform the entire sort of transformer architecture in general. So from 1943 to 2012, it's a very long time span to actually get this out into the world and working. Congratulations. Okay, so that's sort of just a little preview of what I'm doing with educators. I'm going in and I'm saying, okay, this is a field that is not brand new. People have been working on this for a very long time. Now we have ChatGPT. That was my first semester at Harvard, and I was doing applied computation. And my first, just a reference, like one of the advanced data science courses that was required for that degree had about 150 students in it. I just taught that same course last year at 600 students in it. So it is drastically changing the sort of enrollment numbers and the interest in these courses. Yeah, so we need to get more students in the BMCC. Maybe a bunch of Harvard students can come over and start working on that. Okay, so this is the other path. We're doing the grant position details for the student and community engagement. This is my favorite part, going into the classrooms and working with students. So my actual role is called the Technology Workforce Exploration Learning Educator, and I'm doing, we call it TWE labs, and I'm developing these for K through 12. So right now I'm doing mathematics in nature for K through 5th students. I think it's a little silly to go into a kindergarten classroom and start talking about AI workforce development with 5-year-olds. So we're sort of starting at a really ground level. Am I trying to get a little tribe of mathematical biologists in Eastern Oregon? Yes, but they don't know that. They're just having fun. I'll show some pictures of this in a little bit. I also, for 6th through 12th, that's where I expand stuff. So then it turns into AI for agriculture and irrigation. And we also got a STAR lab, and my professor at Harvard did AI and astronomy, and he's really excited about helping us develop some stuff for astronomy. And we have great night skies out here, so it's great to get students and parents to come up and start doing night sky stuff. I serve as the AI content specialist educator at any community events. So we have a lot of festivals during the summer, a lot of summer camps, outdoor days. Anytime I can go and just sort of like get some AI content in there, that's part of my job description. And then support the Mobile Maker Lab effort by promoting career awareness and AI-driven learning. So just sort of trying to get all of our networks in place in order to bring awareness to some of our programming, reaching out to OTEC, which is the local education or electrical cooperative, state parks like Wallowa Lake, and the interpretive centers that we have here, including museums. Okay, so this is one of my favorite activities to do. So I do math and nature camps. I'm gonna pass these out. So just to show you some of the artwork that they do, I focus on mathematics in nature, obviously. Thank you. And one of the parts that I do is like, how do I get kids to do math without actually knowing that they're doing math? And I have them build a graph network and sort of whatever designs that they want to do. And you can all just pass those around if you want to see. So graph networks, it's not the graph that you typically think of when you're thinking about mathematics. It's not like the x-axis, y-axis, z-axis. A graph network is what neural network architecture is actually based on. So with that drawing that we saw, it went like this, something like that. So lines and vertices, and it's all about connections. This is, AI really is like just replicating the connections that we're seeing in our brain, the logical calculus of neural activity that's actually, you know, binary, turns on and turns off of neural networks, neurons in your brain. So all these, being able to like form lines and connections and make patterns out of it, that's a huge component of my math and nature camps. So we'd have them do a design. I always have them do a model on a piece of paper, and then I go home at night, nail all them in, and then they're making those connections with lines and string. There are about 10 to 15 students per camp, and pictures. And I'm doing my last one of the summer this weekend over in Baker. So we do, the majority of the camp is focusing on patterns and shapes in nature around us, and then building things out of it. So we do microscope activities with leaves and plant cells. We actually build geodomes out of newspaper, and I have them all do models on their desk first. And it's a great way. My goal is for any kid to say, like, I've been to math camp and it was fun. So we do that, and then all the art projects that they do, we actually host an end of the year art show in Baker. So it's such a great way, and kids can say, like, I had an art show. And then they love the microscope activity. I really focus on patterns and cells, and then that just broadens the conversation when we actually go out into the parks. Am I doing on time? Okay. So lessons on recognizing connections and patterns in nature and using art to describe them. There are 3-day camps in general, and then 2 days of in-class instruction. We partner with Blue Mountain Community College, but the Baker satellite office. And then we have 1 day of instruction on a field trip. So we go out to a nature park called Phillips Ford Park, and we do a lot of pattern recognition, and then we actually build mandalas. They had a beetle infestation on a small area of their trees, so just a ton of stumps around. So we're like, okay, this is an opportunity to have a little art show in nature. So we go around and we have them form a pattern with just trees, pine cones, or not trees, leaves, pine cones, sticks, just anything sort of around them. And then they burn the old wood so that the infestation wouldn't spread. And so they actually like write their name on the stump and then form their mandala around their name. This year we have 45 Baker and Union County K through 5th graders, and it sells out every, this is the 3rd year that I've done this, but the 1st year through GoSTEM, and it's a really popular camp. So it's great to get kids out doing the art projects, but then broadening it when we actually go on the field trip. I think that's it. So in terms of my 6 through 12 labs, so I got told very quickly that AI means something very different in agriculture, especially in our area. We basically grow cows out here. So AI is artificial insemination when we're talking about agriculture. And I was like, okay, I'm not doing that. So I'm like, okay, if anyone has any questions on artificial intelligence, come to me. The other AI, I'm not helpful. Exactly, that supports the ML. So I am going around to all of our Eastern Oregon, as much as I can, to our Eastern Oregon high schools and middle schools. I'm partnering with the Oregon FFA, and I got contact with all of our regional teachers through the Oregon Ag Teachers Association back in, what was it, May? And I'm doing 4 lab offerings. I'm also partnering with BMCC. They have an agricultural associates, and they also have a high school extension program. So hopefully we're gonna be traveling around and host like an AI week at a high school at an ag, in an ag course. So I have 4 lab offerings. 1 is See Like a Satellite, 2 is Predict the Pump, 3 is Talk to a Tractor, and 4 is Cool the Cloud. So as I mentioned previously, there is no AI without data, and there's no AI without data centers. So the first step, a lot of the students that I'm working with, they've never worked with agricultural data before, and a lot of them are on farms of like thousands and thousands of acres. So it's usually their parents that are doing sort of that oversight, and they're just, doing the manual labor. So it's really cool to be able to, we'll do an example of this soon, but the See Like a Satellite, this is actually, they can look at their own property throughout the year. So I use satellite data from Landsat, and that's been going since the 1980s. So they actually see what their grandparents were doing on the farm in these GIFs that they can develop. Second is Predict the Pump. This is the one that I'm really most passionate about, and I do have a lot of worries in terms of workforce development in our area. And this is all through irrigation districts. So this is my irrigation district, so outside of Baker, when you're driving up to Sumter, this is Phillips Lakes Reservoir. I really recommend the reservoir, it's beautiful. But it is dammed by a dam called Mason Dam, and it was built in 1965. And when these are dammed, then it depends on sort of the purpose, but this is 100% devoted to agricultural irrigation and also just recreation. People can boat on it and swim in it. But this is managed and run by the irrigation district for our entire valley. And I'll show a GIF of the agricultural production around Baker. And for my irrigation district, we're called the Baker Valley Irrigation District, it has been managed by someone, a father and then a son for 60 years. And the son is retiring next year, Jeff Colton and Jim Colton. So Jeff is retiring next year, and he has no successor. And it is this whole area is about 2,500 acres, like the surface of it. And it supports 42,000 acres of irrigation, and it supports about upwards of, I think it was $6 million of agricultural production in terms of market value. And that is huge for a small rural town. The agricultural that surrounds it is really the backbone of our economy. Other than that, we have hospitals, we have a high school, and we have grocery stores. Baker doesn't have a mill industry anymore. We used to do have a mill factory or a mill, but that has since gone. And so really it's just ag that's supporting our entire community. So if this, as you can see throughout the years, there's the time stamp in the top left. You can see it, this breadth, or that's the drought years and that's the non-drought years. This is an interesting geological feature. It's called mine tailings. Like David said, I'm from a gold mining family, and they're adit mines in Sumter, but then they're also dredge. So that was a massive dredge. So think of it like a giant boat on a river, and it digs up the entire, all the ground beneath it to pull up gold. That's been there since the 1880s, and it's not going anywhere. So that has an interesting feature in terms of the water that we have in the reservoir and how it actually impacts our agriculture downstream. The Talk to the Tractor Lab, there, Big Cat and I were talking yesterday. Basically, anything that moves is going to be automated, and how it's actually going to be impacting the people that use it. We already have self-steering tractors, so they really just have to sit, producers just have to sit in it and make sure it's doing what they want in terms of seeding, harvesting, baling, fertilizing. But I guarantee there's going to be a point where they just sit in it, they can actually talk to the tractor, tell it what it wants to do for the day, and then just monitor it through their app when they're in their house. A lot of the producers in our area, they don't want everything to be done for them. They do want to have a hand in what is happening on their property, but nobody wants to be harvesting at 3 in the morning, which is a lot of what the producers around here do. And then the last lab is Cool the Cloud. For AWS, for all the good that they do, they did take up about 12% of the wheat production in this area. So they bought out the land that we do have in this area. I don't know which way you all probably came east on I-84, but if you were driving west, there's a really good lookout, and you can see just like this patchwork quilt. That is all dryland farming for wheat, and those dryland farmers are having a pretty tough time. For what I've been told with BMCC, they can't really have another bad year. They're just not getting the yield that they have traditionally gotten. So how does it seemed a bit hypocritical for me to care about water and care about AI and then not also recognize the impact that this is having on our water systems, the land, and the energy around it. So what I try to do is talk about Cool the Cloud. I'm pretty sure we're all aware. AI takes water. It's usually treated water. What happens to that? And then talk about this and try to talk about it in a positive light. These data centers, they took water before AI was ever really on the scene. So if people are really passionate about it, then it needs to be applied to every other aspect that we use a digital footprint for. So it's sort of just getting students aware that it does take water to do AI. And also, I don't love the term cloud. It makes it seem like very far away. And as some of you are driving here, it definitely has a footprint. And how do we talk to students about that? So basically, I go to all the teachers that I met through the FFA program and the Oregon Teachers Association. I go into these ag classrooms, these CT classrooms, technical classrooms. And then I say, this is a nice menu to pick from. Let's work out a date. And then I usually spend 3 to 4 days in there. And then hopefully with BMCC, we can do a full week. Yeah, so one of the biggest needs for agricultural workforce and development in our 7 counties, that is irrigation districts. Unless you're dryland farming, like sort of around here, there is no agriculture economy without an irrigation economy. So there are some pamphlets, if you could pass those out right there. I thought I could do just a little preview of what I would do if we were doing the Predict the Pump. A lot of people don't know that this data is there and free public to use. So the dams are through the Bureau of Reclamation. All that data is free and public online. All the satellite stuff, all the satellite data, free and public online. But there's a huge barrier to actually know how to get it and know what to do when you do get it. So this is the Umatilla project, the pamphlets that we're passing around. This is all the irrigation reservoirs for our area that we're in right now. So there are 3 reservoirs. This one is the Phillips Reservoir that I work with. It's the McKay, the 3 Mile, and then there's another one. As you can see on the back, you can see the numbers that it actually contributes to, and this pamphlet's a little out of date. You can tell by the photos, they're a little retro, it's cool. But it really supports the agriculture development in this area. And it's interesting, the McKay one that we're going to do our little exercise on if we have time. That actually bypasses all of the dryland farming that is surrounding it. So it's interesting to me that we're reserving water in a certain area, and then none of the agricultural that's right directly next to it is actually being used for it. And like I said, all of this data is publicly available online. It's through a web service called Hydromet, and it's all through the Bureau of Reclamation. So what's the volume and what's the discharge in order for the irrigators to grab it out of those ditches and irrigate their farms. So someone asked a question last night, you have the circle crops and then you have the square crops. If it is a circle crop, it's on something called a pivot irrigation system. Valley, it's a company called Valley and Renke. They're like the biggest distributors of, it's called agricultural construction. So these are huge investments by the farmers to do. They're millions of dollars. And so basically if it's a circle farm, they're all monocrops around here. It's pivoted right in the center, and then the entire thing's automated, and it sprays irrigation and sometimes fertilizer onto the crop. And if it's dryland farming, it's mainly wheat in this area. So they only get what the rain gives them. Okay. So yeah, that's just a little pamphlet. Ideally, what I do is I come into a school district and I talk about the irrigation district that's closest to them. So a lot of these kids, they're from farming families, and they have some familiarity with them, but I want to do like field trips to these reservoirs, interviews with the irrigation districts, and then to get them, they all have boards that they have to work with as well. So we have aging boards, we have aging board members who are aging out, we have irrigation district managers who are aging out, ditch runners who are aging out. So it's really important to me that we get a lot of knowledge and power back to the students who are being directly impacted by this. Okay, so we'll see if this works. I was troubleshooting this morning with the guy who runs this user interface. So you can either, I've never done it on a phone, but I just did the QR code. So if you can participate if you want. There's a QR code right here. I've never done it on a phone, but we'll see. Or you can just Google Hugging Face, GIS, WQS, Streamlit, and that'll take you. So this is one of the outputs for the See Like a Satellite lab that we do. Could I get oh, it's already there. And the best method that I found working with students is to make this a graded assignment through the class. Otherwise, they don't really participate. And then I got it plugged in if you switch over. So the developer of this, his name's Q Xing. He's amazing. He works in Kentucky, and he has a little, he does all this open source. There's a little feature on that website in order to buy him a cup of coffee. It's really sweet. And we were having some issues today with it in terms of it actually developing the MP4. We'll see if could you get it up on? It's a wonderful community for agricultural producers that do a lot of open source stuff and make it very user friendly. So this is a geospatial application. I could have this on what's called a Google Notebook and go into classrooms. The majority of the high schools around here, they have Google pads. There's a name for them. A Chromebook, yeah. So they have Chromebooks and they have Google accounts, so it's easiest to use Google products rather than Amazon. But Amazon snuck out, so they don't know I said that. So we're going to be trying to develop a time lapse. So just like I mentioned, this is the one that I did for my thesis, and it was a Landsat time lapse of the agricultural production for Baker County. So this is how small Baker County is, and this is how large the agricultural production is around it. And it is all sourced from the water in this reservoir and then the rains that we do get, which in summer are few and far between. So we're going to try to develop our own. And I thought it would be interesting to do it on the McKay Reservoir, which is the reservoir just south of us that is a part of the Umatilla project. So if you go to time lapse, click time lapse, if you're following along. And I've never tried to develop, actually produce an MP4 on a phone, so we'll see if it works. And then it's pretty simple instructions. So you can do Pendleton, Oregon. That will drop you. And then just south of us is the McKay Reservoir. This is one of the reservoirs that is purely for irrigation. And then I usually do a square. It's called a region of interest. So you click the square and then you just select the McKay Reservoir. And then you can export that. And that exports it into a GeoJSON file. And then you just take that GeoJSON and drag and drop. So this is, it lets kids, everyone's doing this on their own Chromebook. They can select, I just have them do the McKay Reservoir to start so that we can get a time lapse of sort of, you can see the drought years. And then whatever the agricultural teacher wants, we can actually have them do it on their own property. The more you zoom in, the little blurrier it gets, but it's cool to they can see like what happened in the 1980s with their property. And then they have one of the part of my lessons is to talk about the electromagnetic spectrum. So we have like red, green, blue that they can do, or the different bands of the ES. So we'll just do red, green, blue. And then you can customize it, all different frames per second. You want to do the start and end year. I'm just going to do a shorter to see if that works. And then I try and slow it down just a little bit. And then you hit submit. It says computing, please wait. I was getting an error this morning. And that's another thing that's great to talk to the students about. It's like, okay, tech, it doesn't work often. So you have to go in and you have to figure out, and it's about persistence and trying to figure it out. It's so easy to give up when you're doing this stuff. So it is taking a little bit long. It's probably going to error. It goes pretty fast. And then they download that MP4 and then they submit it to their teacher for grading. So that is just a little example of some of the labs that we do. And I think that's it. Do you want to switch back to the other one? Did anyone get it to work? Just curious. Okay. Mm-hmm. And that's it. Yeah, so if you know any ag producers out here, I'm also wanting to talk to farmers about data privacy and really who owns the data of the machinery that they're working with. It's all part of the conversation. So thank you. I hope you were entertained slightly.
Oh, that was terrific. Thank you. I've been looking forward to this for a while, so I'm very happy. So let's just take like 4 or 5 minute break, and then we'll come back and talk about occupational profiles.
All right, as you come back to the table, you should have in your meeting materials a copy of the slides we're going to walk through now and the profile packet itself. So you'll want to make sure that you have those handy. All right, Shauna asked me to walk you through this next part of the agenda as we've been having this conversation with all 3 of the consortium and keeping this body of work moving forward. So I'm going to walk you through some updates. I know we have spent a considerable amount of time on the wage and occupation profiles and the wage and occupation data and the legislative requirements over the last probably year-ish. We are now at the point where we have taken all of the feedback that we've gotten from all three of the consortium and have put together a packet that is ready for publishing. So I am going to make the assumption that you all have spent some time with this in preparation for today's meeting, but want to walk through how our thinking about this body of work has evolved over the last year. Next slide, please. I don't know where to stand. I don't want to be in front of the camera, so I'm going to stand right here. I can still see everybody. So first, what is in the packet? So we made the decision to create three distinct packets, healthcare, manufacturing, and technology. And each of the packets includes an executive summary that details a bit about what prompted this work, the legislative requirements, how we have engaged with the consortium, and how our thinking has evolved throughout the implementation. There's also a table of contents. When this is posted online, those are live hyperlinks to each of the occupation profiles that are included in your packet. As an appendices, the full data table is included. And so you should have that available in your meeting materials as well. This includes all occupations in the that are considered high tech. And then the profiles themselves are for those occupations that have been deemed high demand, high wage. Based on a lot of questions and discussion, we added a glossary of terms. So that is available in your packet. Let's see. And then a couple of additional appendices that we've added. One is from the Employment Department. This includes a statement about methodology. And the second is a product of the Workforce and Talent Development Board and their Oregon employability skills work. And it's a summary of that curriculum as sort of foundational workforce needs across all occupations. Next slide, please. So a little bit about how our thinking has evolved as we've moved to this phase of the work. The first is that we got a lot of feedback about the audience. Who is it that we're really preparing these profiles for, and who might use this type of information? The legislation was written with the intent to provide transparency for training participants and really put that accountability on training providers, specifically where work-based learning was involved. And so our original thinking was around training providers and training participants as a primary audience. As the work has evolved, we heard really clearly that the way this is structured is likely designed for policymakers and program administrators. So it stays in the vein of education and training providers, work-based learning providers who are developing programs and policies. And we have started thinking about the end user or the training participant as maybe a secondary audience. It became clear that we could not create profiles that would be all things to all people, meet the needs of a policymaker and a high school student, for example. So we really landed on the primary audience being program administrators and policymakers. Secondly, the section of the occupation profiles that talks about education and education requirements. I think initially that said education requirements. That section has morphed quite a bit over time. There have been a lot of questions about terminology in that section. So we removed language around requirements. We included both education and credential information in that section. And then you will see some additional information included there around the definition of typical entry-level requirement and the fact that that is not the same as minimum requirement. And then competitive education requirements, and those are included in the glossary. Additionally, in the glossary with some feedback, we specified that this is with a statewide lens, so the education and credential requirements are not reflective of any regional differences, where the wage information is distinguished by locality. And then lastly, for some occupations, and I don't think this is the case in the tech packet, but for some occupations, we have included statutory or administrative rule references where there might be a minimum credential requirement associated with a particular license. That is most applicable in healthcare. I think there may be some manufacturing, but wanted to flag that as a distinction. Program information, we've talked a lot about the fact that there would be great value in identifying the education and training programs that are available in Oregon that would lead to a degree or credential for the occupation. And we recognize that the HEC's capacity around program landscape scan is limited. And if we were going to publish a program inventory or a list of programs, it had to be comprehensive. So we intend to start to do a bit deeper dive, maybe on an occupation by occupation basis around program information, and have left space for that to be included in a future iteration. And then lastly, you all have been incredibly helpful in the evolution of where the profiles landed in terms of the format and the content and how that information is presented. Next slide, please. A little bit about the purpose and objectives, because I think our thinking about this has also evolved. We've talked a lot with you about the original legislative mandate, but our desire to really then take that and make it more usable, applicable to your work and others. But the original purpose was to publish sector-specific data on, high wage, high demand, high skill occupations in each of the key sectors that really do support accessible career pathways for those occupations. And we have started thinking about this as not only a publicly available resource, but a tool for you all as consortium members. How might you use this data to inform the priorities that you all advance to address barriers to recruitment and retention and completion in technology-specific education and training pathways? So we're publishing the wage rate standards varied by locality for each skilled occupation in the sector. And what we have been thinking about, and I'm going to show you some examples of how you might think about this, is where could we take this next? For each of the occupations, we're thinking about using the wage and occupation data as a foundation to exploring supply and demand data and supply and demand forecasting. What do we know about current employment rates for a particular occupation, projected demand, and then coupling that with enrollment in the degree and credential programs that would lead to employment in that occupation. Creating some infographics related to the career pathway or credential pathway, and then developing the program and skill inventory that I was just talking about a moment ago. We've been thinking about this in terms of what we're calling opportunity maps. And so how do we, for each occupation, pull together all of that information about what is the occupation, what are the wages anticipated, what are the education and training requirements, what is the supply and demand forecast so that individuals can be thinking about the competitiveness of entering that field, what are the career and credential pathway maps, and really building out what is the opportunity for that occupation at a point in time. And so some examples of how that might look from some other work. First, the Semiconductor Industry Consortium, we mentioned this earlier, convened by OBC, has been doing some work around supply and demand and has some examples of infographics that we wanted to share with you. First is a supply and demand for the semiconductor industry. Go ahead and go to the next. Thanks. So this is one example of how we might think about supply and demand. In the semiconductor sector, there are a variety of occupations from entry level to PhD, and they've been doing some really interesting work to map what are the degrees and credentials, what is the supply coming out of colleges and universities in that space, related to what roles and where in the sector, and what might the demand for each of the parts of that sector. Next slide, please. Here's another infographic related to the career pathways and what degrees and credentials might be required for upskilling. So this is an example of something that we might consider incorporating that looks at the primary education pathways, the upskilling pathways, and the positions related to each of those education levels. The next two examples come from the recent behavioral health talent assessment that was conducted by the Healthcare Industry Consortium. And the first is looking at labor supply. So the consultant that conducted the behavioral health talent assessment looked at enrollment across all of the community colleges and public universities in Oregon, and looked at enrollment change over the last 10 years with some consideration of the pandemic years, specific to behavioral health degrees and credentials. And this tool, from just a supply perspective, did highlight some areas that really caused us to say, well, I wonder why that is. Why is enrollment down significantly? Why is enrollment up significantly here? Are there programs that have been put in place? And so I share this with you as an example of a labor supply forecasting tool that might help us to identify where there are gaps or opportunities. Next slide is the behavioral health talent assessment career pathway map. And this is a very small snippet of what is like a 7-page PDF of all of the licensing bodies, the licenses that they grant, and the occupations that those lead to, with different colors related to the degree that must be associated with that credential requirement. Behavioral health is sort of a unique ecosystem, and but I wanted to show the graphic as an example of something that we could use to inform decision making. And then lastly, in the behavioral health talent assessment, they also did a skills inventory where they evaluated, I'm standing right in front of you, where they evaluated the skills that were required across all behavioral health occupations and created an inventory of sort of what are those common. They found significant commonalities around the foundational skills for all occupations in the behavioral health field. So these are some examples of how we envision you might use this work in your next steps. And we wanted to just walk you through, again, the evolution in our thinking, what has brought us to this point, and how we think you all might be able to use this information going forward. We'll talk a little bit later about each of the consortium. We're going to encourage you all to pick sort of 2 or 3 occupations that you might prioritize for us to start doing this deep dive, collecting additional data on an occupation by occupation basis. I think some of, you look at that original data set, it's got what, 130, 150 occupations in it, and that is pretty overwhelming. Where do we begin? And so being able to narrow it down to the 40 or so occupations that we've profiled that meet that high wage, high demand, high skill threshold. And then are there a couple in here that we might prioritize going forward? So we're going to move into a discussion about the packets and what I've just presented to you. I do want to note that when we move to the action item, which Ronan, if you want to just move to that just for reference. So let's talk a little bit about what I just presented. How does that resonate? Do you have any questions? But we will be moving forward with advancing approval of the packet that's presented to you today. And it is a requirement for the consortia to update these biannually. So we've been talking as staff. We've been working on this for nearly 2 years to get it to this point. So we feel like it would make the most sense for us to begin that biannual update in 2026, likely when the 2025 wage and occupation data is available. Is it 2025 is available in 2026, correct? Yeah. Okay. So then when we update the documents in 2026, it would have 2025 wage data, because right now it's 2023, and that already feels outdated. So we'll advance approval of this hopefully today, and then we'll be working on building out the data that we've talked about, and then you will update these in 2026, kicking off that biannual review from there forward. Excellent. Okay. So any questions about what I've shared with you? Does this resonate in terms of how you all have been talking about and thinking about the wage and occupation data? Don't be shy. Well, maybe we just want to move into sort of a litmus test of the red, yellow, green. The packet as presented to you today, how we would facilitate the conversation is, if you're like, nope, I've reviewed all 87 pages, it all looks great, let's go. Yellow would be, nope, I have some questions or amendments that are needed. And red would be, I can't move forward without addressing some questions or concerns. And then if you raise a yellow or a red card, we just, in the spirit of building consensus, ask that you couple your question with a suggested edit or amendment. And so I do see a question from Amy. Why don't we do a quick litmus test, see where folks are at, and then we'll move to discussion. So with the packet that you have in front of you as presented, would you be inclined to approve for the technology sector publishing wage rate standards by locality for the skilled occupations as presented? Red, yellow, or green cards? Okay, excellent. So then if you have questions, comments, concerns, if you want to put your name card up or just raise your hand. I know Amy had a question. So why don't you take it away? Is there a microphone down there? There's lots of microphones down here.
I think this was brought up before, and I don't remember, so apologies if it's been addressed, but the maps that are by workforce development region, it says 9 development regions, and there's only 8 boxes.
Does it say 9 on there?
Yeah.
Okay. So we will get that updated. The distinction, and I think this is somewhere in the document, but Ronan will correct me if I'm wrong, is there are 9 local workforce development board regions. The employment department combines the Clackamas workforce region and the Portland Metro workforce region into one, which makes 8. We will make sure that gets updated. Thank you.
We do break out the Clackamas from the Multnomah, Washington for some of our data, so just let it be known that it is available at a more geographic detailed level. Some of the data.
For some, yeah, but universally, yeah. Okay, great. Okay, Lisa.
Is this on? Okay, there we go. I can support this. I just want to go on the record by saying I think, especially because we know some of these are lagging indicators around training requirements and so on. So somehow just us recording that we know that the education requirements are in flux and training, especially with AI, what is that going to do to some of these? And so that's an area that we'll want to continue to look at and make sure is accurate.
Yeah, that's great. Shauna, I don't know if you have your own microphone, but do you want to talk a little bit about also the occupations themselves?
Yeah, some of the occupations that we in this room, we all know are going to be big future occupations aren't even reflected in data. Like those occupations don't even exist. So it is lagging, sadly. But I'm sure we'll have future conversations with Amy and Gail and Jason and the team about how to approach that and how to try to capture those changes because they happen so fast, right? So Corinne.
My question, or first I want to comment, thank you for the glossary of terms in here. I think that was a great addition. My question is about the high wage occupations. Obviously we have 2023 data in there. Are we going to consistently update that or keep that on is that part of the biannual updates that we'll be doing as well?
Yeah, that'll be part of the biannual update. So right now it's the 2023 data. If we update at the tail end of 2026, it will be 2025 data. So it will always be lagging. There's always work we can do as staff to support, a particular inquiry, but for publishing the data, it would be on that biannual cycle. So 2025 and then 27 in 28. Yep. Mm-hmm. All right.
Stephanie?
So with some of the data lagging in those professions that we mentioned, but this is used for policymakers, should that be highlighted in the executive summary that the recognition of AI, that there are some occupations not listed here yet, and that these aren't the only occupations that we should focus on in policymaking?
That's an excellent point. Yeah. That's a good note. Thanks.
We'll probably want to work with, I know Employment Department has shared that there aren't occupation, I'm going to get over my skis on this, but there aren't occupation codes for some occupations that are emerging. And maybe we can work with Employment Department on a sentence about the limitations, or Skip, maybe you've got something where we can speak to both the limitations around occupation codes and the evolution in the tech space. And Lisa, to your point, as those occupations are evolving and emerging and technology is evolving and emerging, education requirements are evolving and emerging simultaneously. We could probably come up with a succinct statement to add to the executive summary that's unique to tech.
Yeah, I was just going to add that there might be an opportunity as well to maybe include a regular, almost annual, squishier sort of glossary or a categorization of emerging occupations. And just in preparation, a week ago or so, I was speaking at a AI and healthcare event with BenCat, and I popped into a bunch of the, AI, Claude, ChatGPT. What are some of the latest healthcare AI and data specific roles that are brand new occupation categories? And they spit out a whole bunch, some of which I'd never even heard of. And so I think there's a lot of education that can occur there that we could be helpful in leading, especially as we start to flag stuff that should be tracked, even if it doesn't have an occupation code associated with it. And maybe we get at it through some surveying of some of the larger employers in the state to get more real-time data. Because I think that'll be really helpful in guiding a lot of the training programs in particular, and then also, of course, our higher ed and workforce partners.
That's great. And we have been talking about just thinking about how we might leverage the NVIDIA AI Ambassador program to really increase our learning around employer needs related to AI, and building on the focus group work that we did last year, and engaging with employers in an ongoing basis across all sectors, which is something you all have been really clear about, that the work that you're doing as a consortium should be mindful of the technology workforce needs across all sectors. So I think those are really great points. So if maybe there's a way for us to include a statement about emerging and evolving in the executive summary, and potentially an additional appendix in the tech packet around emerging occupations. I might suggest, I'm going to take microphone privilege again. I might suggest that the emerging occupations and additional appendices about emerging occupations, we fold that into the 2026 update, because I think that's probably going to take a little additional work if we're going to do it well. But I think we can include a statement in the executive summary around emerging and evolving occupations, workforce needs, and education requirements. I think that we can embed in the executive summary as an amendment to today's motion.
Doing a LinkedIn search, like by key terms, trying to get at that question, right? Like, how many occupations in the Portland area come up with like this AI related term, which is not a really precise way, but just like, it's so hard to try to figure out, like, where do these skills appear in what occupations and how many are there? And anyway, so I think there's a few tools we can use, but it's not simple, but we can explore it.
Oh, I was just going to say that, yeah, in terms of prompting, like looking at some of the major job boards and asking, for some examples that are more commonly cited in the last 6 months of types of occupations is one way to potentially get at a more collective picture there. But yeah, and BenCat, did you have something?
But just as an example, I was going to say that I didn't see data center technicians called out here, right? And that's an emerging occupation. So maybe in that executive summary, this is an emerging occupation, but include with it the demand from the industry, right, for data center. How many do they expect to fill over the next few years? And then that'll give you something very actionable because you already have the supply data.
It is included, the data center technician. It's under computer network specialists. But that brings a good point, because that definition of that code is evolving based on this occupation that's within it. So that's something that it could bear explaining or understanding.
Steal it back from Lisa.
One other point I wanted to make, the discussion about building these new AI factories and how they depend on the skilled trades workforce. I'm not sure if that belongs in the manufacturing part of Future Ready or in the technology part, but that's also something we should track, future looking.
It's such a good point. We have been talking quite a bit about the overlap between manufacturing and technology, and what you have today are really the tech specific. So there were some healthcare overlap. I think you might even see that in your full data set. There's some healthcare overlap, there's some manufacturing overlap, and we tried to just distinguish if something, if the employment for the occupation was more concentrated in manufacturing, we included it in the manufacturing packet. Similar for if it was healthcare specific, even though there was a tech overlap, we included it in the healthcare packet. So you may be interested in looking at the occupation profiles in the other sectors to see where there might be overlap. And I think, Amy, to your point about the data center technician, when we start to dive into the education and training programs that align with an occupation and start to do a little bit of that landscape assessment, that may be where some of those nuances unfold a bit. Yeah, Lisa.
So, and I know that cybersecurity is embedded in one of these, but that's another place that whether it's in the executive summary, how we call that out, because if you're looking, it makes it seem like we're not addressing it, and it's in there, but it's coded in a weird way. And so, however, there's a couple of those we need to pull out.
Yeah, just building on that, I think what we're seeing trend-wise, and this might be worth mentioning explicitly, is the hybridization of new roles. So it's not that it's an entirely new occupation category. It's just like a combination of two or more existing ones. And so how do we capture that? Like one that I just learned about recently, a major tech company is hiring for a first ever CTO, HR, Chief People Officer position, where it's how do you determine where technology alone is used, where a combination of humans and technology and a combination of just humans. And it's like, well, those are high-skilled, high-paid jobs, more because it's almost like you're requiring two different disciplines to be combined into a single role. And we're seeing this across the board: healthcare, manufacturing, tech roles specifically, where it's a mix.
I think speaking in that statement that we develop, and we'll circulate it amongst y'all, but I think something about emerging, evolving trends towards multidisciplinary workforce needs that include technology. And Shauna and I have been talking a lot about cybersecurity and AI as sort of the two, they seem to be surfacing as some of the priorities for this group. And if you look at the packet in its current state, it's hard to see those reflected in the packet. So I think if we call them out as examples, in particular in that statement, that would be good. Great points. All right, so then I would modify the action item to be approving the packet as presented with the HEC preparing an additional statement in the executive summary that refers to the emerging and evolving nature of the occupations, the workforce needs, and the education requirements specific to the tech sector. We've captured the nuances to the conversation around that. But with that addition and the change from 9 to 8 workforce regions.
Page 57, I think we carried over some numbers because the projected job openings are higher than the chart shows. So
Ronan, can you explain that? I think that's a real thing.
it's the quality assurance analyst because it shows that there's 131.
I think the distinction, you double check this, but the distinction is that in some cases it is total employment, and in another case it is employment in the tech sector. Page 57.
If you could look at your gray boxes, you've got projected job annuals open are 1,900, but the total projected employment change is only 131, and those numbers just happen to match the previous page exactly.
Oh.
So I think we might have just check those numbers to see if.
I can totally do that. Although I will flag there are instances where the data is not available for whatever reason, so it may not be reflected in there, but I will definitely check.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you for the detailed catch. So Lisa did her homework. That's what I take away from that. Total number employed is duplicated as well. Okay, so page 57, we will update the data. All right, so with all of those amendments, let's go back to the red, yellow, green. We'll be looking for consensus to approve for publishing the occupation and wage profile packet as presented with the amendments that I just mentioned. And look at that, that's consensus. Now, we have been joking that there's something, we have to find a way to, that's just not as satisfying as a vote. So take a moment to acknowledge the really important work that you all have done to get to this point. So thank you. And with that, I think we're back on schedule and it's time for a lunch break. So that can be our celebration. We'll toast sandwiches or something. All right. Thank you all so much. Be back at what time? Be back at 12:30. So okay, no. Yeah, go ahead and take 10 minutes, stretch your legs, grab your lunches, but we're being joined by the folks from the UAS program, and we'll get started with that as soon as y'all are back at your spots. Thank you.
Well, I get the honor of hosting our next panel to talk about the UAS program here out of Blue Mountain. We're waiting for one of our presenters to get online, but I do want to get this started. And here we go. There's Joseph. So I want to start with the introductions of our guests, and if they can share their name and their relationship to this program, and also share a little bit about the UAS project. And I'm going to pick on Rachel first as the instructor at the Blue Mountains program to kick us off and tell us a little bit about the program.
Oh, thank you, Lisa. I'm Rachel Driver. I am an instructor at BMCC. I work for Del Mar Aero Education, which we focus on primarily training and operations here in Pendleton. So that's a little bit about me.
Hello, is this thing on? All right, it's on. Hi, Nathan Temple. I'm right here out of Pendleton, Oregon, and back about 4 or 5 years ago, I was the first student through the Del Mar BMCC UAS program, and then since then I've co-founded Advanced Drone out of here in Pendleton, and we've been operating for 3 years now.
Sorry about that. Real quick again, my name is Dazen Saigo. I'm a student at Blue Mountain Community College going through the drone program associate's degree. I'm also a tribal member of the Confederated Tribes Umatilla Indian Reservation as well. I also work for Cayuse Native Solutions as their drone operator. So yeah, it's really awesome to be part of it and be one of the first students through the program. Yeah.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Lindsay Watchman, and I was helping set up the workforce development department, and the drone grant is one of several that we have within our workforce initiatives for the tribe. We manage federal grants, we manage state grants, philanthropy grants, foundation grants. But this is I'm sure in my answers later on, be able to get to it, but this is a success story, the UAS here in Pendleton, having the instructors, having previous students off doing their own businesses, and then again, just being at the up front of a new industry is really, really exciting. But it is a partnership. I want to point that out from the very beginning. You know, the Blue Mountain Community College, Del Mar, Cayuse Holdings, as well as the tribe as the fiscal sponsor of the grant. So it did take all four of those partners to really have the success that they'll be able to talk about here in the next few moments. Thank you.
So I'm Joseph Wado, pleased to be here. I'm the president and executive director of the Oregon UAS Accelerator. We are a state designated center of innovation excellence. There are only 5 in the state, and we are the only one of those 5 that focuses on accelerating the future of unmanned aerial and robotic systems. We host 2 cohorts of startup innovators twice a year. Each cohort has about 5 to 7 startup innovators. It's really pleasing to me that many of your panelists today I've worked with in one capacity or the other, and I'm just happy to be here and happy to answer any questions that the audience may have.
Well, thank you. Oh, I'm going to start at the end with our students, because after all, that's what all these programs are kind of designed for. And so, Dazon, will you share a little bit, oops, let me get my question here, about what inspired you to pursue a degree in this program?
Yeah, of course. In all honesty, in the beginning, I had zero idea about drones or what UAS even meant. I was lucky enough to be able to apply for a drone operator position at Cayuse Native Solutions through a competitive process. And the first time I didn't even get selected. So, but then I did. I went through Del Mar's commercial course, actually, not the Blue Mountain one, and I actually learned how to, what it takes to become a pilot, how to be an aviator, how drones are being used today. And I was like, wow, that was really neat. So through that, after that, I got my Part 107 commercial license to be able to fly drones and actually make money, and started learning about all the different careers and what kind of wages there were available out there, even in the state of Oregon, which is really awesome. And then Del Mar actually announced that they were gonna be starting a associate's program at Blue Mountain. So I thought it would be really cool to be one of the first students to be actually go through the program and get my associate's degree. And now I have about 2 terms left until I graduate. So I'm excited to be able to actually get my associates in that and be able to continue my career at Cayuse Native Solutions as a drone operator, but also see what the other drone world has to offer.
Thank you. So Rachel, can you talk a little bit about the program at Blue Mountain and specifically what you're training the students to do and how that program got developed?
Yeah, so I'd like to turn that question to speaking on core competencies, right? All right, sorry. So I'm going to talk about the core competencies that we focus on. So obviously our curriculum is designed based on what the industry needs, right? We do place a strong emphasis on like STEM education. With that, we focus on technical skills, right? So the mission planning itself, actual sensor integration and maintenance and things like that. We also focus on hands-on training. So we train on both multi-rotor and fixed-wing platforms and both simulated and on real aircraft, right? And then the last thing I say is workplace ready skills or workforce ready skills. So I like to place an emphasis on the students getting an understanding of in-field professionalism. Along with that, I'd say oral communication and just collaborative teamwork. So we make that a priority of our training.
Nathan, I was asking you, so what skills and certifications do you look for when you're hiring graduates from the UAS training program?
Yeah. So first and foremost, like Dazon mentioned, getting your 14 CFR Part 107, your remote pilot certificate, fly drones commercially. Without that, you're kind of uneligible. So coming right out of Del Mar in the BMCC program, you're going to be able to pass your 107 and be able to kind of just roll into the commercial side of UAS operations. So got to have your Part 107.
Thank you. So I think it was mentioned by Lindsay that this didn't happen without partnerships to actually be created. And so Lindsay, can you share a little bit about how you were involved in building this partnership and with the various providers for this industry?
Yeah, it's a perfect opportunity to shout out to Sarah, right? And my project manager. They're so important. Where are you, Sarah? Hey. Awesome. You know, again, I was setting up a department, and we have a whole bunch of different workforce development programs in different departments within the tribe, whether education or human resources or tribal employment rights. So we were building this concept of a one-stop workforce development department. You know, so all these various grants, you know, we're all going to be housed there, and that's what Brandy's going to be implementing soon. But really, to give Dazon a little bit more credit, he graduated from our tribal charter school. And again, when you create your own school in your own home, you're able to manipulate what's being taught, right? You know, but so a lot of cultural value there, but also Dazon off on his own and got employed in very quickly. A year and a half ago, I'd say Dazon was the only tribal poster child, you know, that had the drone experience and stuff. And all of his peers, including my son, who they play basketball together, you know, they're all like, hey, Dazon can do it. How can we get in on what Dazon's doing? And I think that's what spurred Cayuse Holdings, Deb Croswell, the CEO of that, to work with our one of our grant writers, and they applied. So this is a round 2 workforce development grant closing out here on that. Again, the whole pipeline isn't usually known, right? All these different pieces, all these partners that have to come into play, didn't know any of these when we were writing the grant. It's just hey, workforce wants some more, you know, applicants. Let's see what we can do something with this partnership. BMCC, again, a shout out to them. Of course, you know, community colleges are supposed to respond to the local training workforce needs of your businesses. You know, so we've been doing that in the past with diesel mechanic and hospitality and tourism degrees and all this. So, you know, a regional partner. So that's always been there. And we all know that when we collaborate, including when we go to Eastern Oregon University, you know, we could go to a 4-year program if they latched on. You know, it could be a 2+2 instead of a 1+1. You know, but again, the proof is really how quickly, and again, the tribe as the fiscal sponsor of this grant, I thought it might be difficult to get 18 participants a month or a year, but it wasn't. There are many folks wanted a whole new industry. They've dabbled in it, had interest. So it's a lot easier to teach people and drag them along when it's something they want to do. So the interest was out there. We have a success story in days, and he's got to do a whole bunch of different things. So I'd say he's our #1 recruiter. But, it's really brought in, a lot of interest, some self-empowerment. We have folks who are gaining there, including myself. I went through the training just to see what our participants were going through, where the holes were, how we could supplement, as also barriers, right? You're always looking for those barriers in the pipeline or those leaks that you need to, tighten up. But again, after about almost 15 years of managing federal and state grants in Indian education and workforce development, this is one of the quickest pipelines. I mean, we're sitting at the end. Our operators are waiting for jobs. We don't have that referral aspect of the pipeline at the very end. But that's a good problem to have. So I'll close with that. Again, it was all these partners, really making it happen, having the UAS, Joseph Bueno with his accelerator, allowing us to have, some internships. So again, just in closing, my role was to work with Sarah in the very beginning to massage the budget so that it was participant friendly. Right, that they had the wraparound support services to really get through every section of the path, right, without having to be broke or be jobless, just to pursue something new. So I'll close with that.
So you mentioned Joseph, so hopefully we can flip him.
Yeah.
Okay, there you are. Can you share with us what Oregon UAS Accelerator has been doing to help grow this ecosystem, both
Sure.
in this region but statewide?
Yeah, sure. When I first was hired to build this program from 0 to 1, one of the things that I wanted to do is a gap analysis to understand where we were lacking, and to bring together all the kind of the stakeholders to see where we and area that I indicated very early on was the fact that because we're located in a rural community, our students and workforce simply don't have the same opportunities as students and people west of the Cascades. So it's very important for me to create a pathway to kind of address the needs of rural, underserved, and tribal students and individuals in terms of workforce development, leading to potential careers in the industry that I serve, which is UAS and robotic systems. And so, Lindsay, I worked very closely with Lindsay, and through the HECC grant, we were able to host a number of tribal interns in our cohorts. In addition to that, we have a line item budget within our actual program to be able to provide for 8 to 10 paid interns per cohort. So it's a win-win situation, in my opinion, because this type of deep tech, roll up your sleeves, practical kind of internships don't happen in the eastern part of our state. They may happen west of the Cascades, but certainly not, or very rarely east of the Cascades. So it's a win-win because it gives students the opportunity to immerse themselves and work side by side with startup founders who are developing technologies in deep tech. And it's a win for our startup founders because they're looking for passionate interns and students and individuals who really want to learn and gain a foothold in this industry. And it's interesting that Lindsay brought up the 2+2. So I've taken it a step further, and this isn't something that has been publicly announced yet, but I am pleased to share that in not too long, pretty soon, we will establish the first 4-year UAS degree at Oregon Tech University in Klamath Falls. And we are looking for matriculation pathways, 2+2 pathways from BMCC UAS students to be able to matriculate and transfer credits to gain a 4-year degree at Oregon Tech, in addition to other community colleges that have UAS programs like Lane Community College in Eugene and Columbia Basin as well. So for us, the small part of what we do and our contribution is we generally work with students and individuals through our UAS internship program, allow them to get practical, real work with startup innovators to see if this is what they really want to do. And in the process, they're helping out our startup innovators get to where they need to be and level up in their business.
Thank you. So Nathan, Joseph kind of mentioned this evolution of kind of the educational pathway, and I'd be interested in hearing from you, how do you see the industry evolving? And what are the changes you're seeing coming on the horizon?
Oh man, I mean, you just seeing what the UAS industry was doing, 10 years ago, you really didn't hear about it much. And then nowadays, I feel like everywhere you turn, everyone's mentioning UAS or knows about UAS and just kind of a hot topic. So, I'm seeing more drone operators in my field pop up every single year. So, I mean, even this year, you've probably seen it double, which is pretty crazy. So, where's the UAS industry going? I mean, it's just gonna keep booming. You see it every year. So, up and up and up.
And just for context, your company, what are you, with your drone work, what are you doing specifically?
What do we do?
To the novice, yes.
Yeah, so we operate under 14 CFR Part 137, and that's aerial applications of pesticides. So you see like the crop dusters, these planes, helicopters, we're doing the same thing just with drones.
So then, Rachel, how is it that you stay current with the evolving field? And how do you ensure that the curriculum stays current for the students?
Yeah, so I think everyone understands that this field is constantly evolving. Regulations and rules are always changing. With that, I'd say our main priority is keeping our curriculum current. And for that, I'd say we use 2 strategies to do that. First one being finding ways to improve and keep the curriculum current itself. So we go back on a consistent basis on lessons that we previously taught, PowerPoints that we taught previously, and find ways to improve on design and flow and context. Make things a little bit more relatable to the students, as well as to what's actually happening in the industry. And then I'd say the second thing is industry input. We're looking for input from like industry employers like Nathan here, input from the graduates of our previous graduates, and constantly look for input from our local partners, right? Seeing where things are going so we can keep things current and relatable.
Do you have any predictions of what's on the horizon, what you think you'll see changing in what you're teaching and how you're teaching?
Do I see things?
Do you have any predictions of what maybe, how the industry may be changing from your end?
I'd say with the regulations themselves, that being the main thing, they're starting to loosen. With that, will be room for companies to evolve even more, and then technology to spread a lot faster. And then obviously with that, you get a lot more jobs and a lot more opportunities for the actual students that are currently in that classroom and internship stage.
Well, the program sounds amazing, but we also know that getting students through takes a lot of support. And so, Lindsay, I wanted to ask you what are some of the wraparound services that you've been providing of participants that have really contributed to their success?
Oh, wonderful. Thank you for asking again, because this is a model. The way that Sarah, and I, and our participants feedback. Peggy's not here. Peggy Bronson, Greg Penny, who now manages the grant with the feedback from our students. Again, when I inherited the grant, grant management is different than grant writing, right? So it's like, okay, but again, having a pulse with the community, I knew they needed, some money reallocated. So was provided, so part of the wraparound services was daycare. There was also a weekly gas allowance so they can get to class. We were able to get an academic stipend. So every week they were in class, they got an academic stipend. And then in the earn and learn phase, if they were in an internship program, they also got a stipend for every week. So it became a real job. It's not something that you had to stop. And then we had the 4-week all-day version, and then we also have the BMCC 11-week night classes twice a week. So again, you have to provide access, right? You can have the best product, you got to market it, and it's got to fit people's schedule. So having that ability for folks to still keep their day job and maybe dabble in it in the evening class was very important. So that flexibility, again, there was a schedule, but the instructors are always very small enough classes, again, so that you got that attention you needed. You had time to come in and make up time. So that was there. So we wanted to make sure that there was some mentorship. Also, once our participants passed their Part 107, they got a drone. They got their own drone piece of equipment, as a great, you're really at the end of the pipeline, right? Here's a drone. Hopefully you take your Part 107 license and you can go out and start commissioning yourself with whatever it is that you'd like to do. It could be some of our participants wanted to use it indoors for theater and having a drone taking video. Another wanted to do fire reduction. Gosh, there's 1,001 applications. Yeah, every week there's something new that a drone is good for. And ultimately, the way it pays back not only Oregon with all these local operators, I mean, at Nathan's request, I think even my son has worked with you, but again, he knows he's at the end of the pipeline. We need more advanced drone LLCs, but again, just a few years ago, I don't know, I can't speak for you, but he was just going through the classes, dabbling, and now he's running this business. He's a model for the industry, and we're trying to get all of our participants to hang out with him and, compliment what he's doing, because he's got enough work until I think you're 99 years old, right? I mean, he's high demand, So again, it's a success story, So again, Heck and Sarah, thank you for allowing all the maneuverability, because again, once all the players start coming in and you see those barriers, you have to be able to be flexible with that budget. It's hard to know what's going to happen for a whole year, and if there's any mid-course turns that you can make, you have to wait a whole year to do that, if ever. So again, I just really want to thank you, Sarah, for that flexibility early on, because it made it possible for the participants to get through this program and potentially, not only working for an Oregon business, but creating their own business. Again, so that's pretty awesome to see. Good job, Nathan.
Well, and I'll ask each of you, and this was not on your list, so this is kind of a wild card. If you could change one thing or have one thing be different that you feel would accelerate your piece of this amazing partnership, what change would help this grow and expand?
I think for me, I'd like to see kind of like more out in the field experience, especially with drones over 55 pounds. A little more technical still to kind of manipulate the controls on those bigger drones. And also there's more strict rules and regulations. So we fly drones up to 222 pounds, so they're a little bigger than the usual little camera drones you see. But I think if we could somehow get students to fly drones over 55 and kind of be more familiar with those rules and regulations, it would help out quite a bit rolling into Part 137 operations.
Kind of add to what Nathan was saying here is, just getting the students the access to the right equipment, I'd say. You know, I make that a point in how I teach, right? To teach fixed wing and multi-rotor platforms in both simulated environments as well as in the field. That being said, like we don't always get the access. They don't always get access to the right equipment, like being those bigger Group 2 and 3 aircraft, right? Those bigger platforms. So getting access to the right equipment and having that be set in the curriculum, like these students will have this to use for this part of their curriculum, and it not be a question of what material, what equipment they're gonna have at any given point. So I'd say that would be the biggest thing. Kind of like our hurdles, having that equipment available for them.
Again, the first part was the flexibility with the budget from year to year. We were all blind, going in the dark. We have no idea what's coming, how much it's going to cost for this, what those barriers were. So the budget has to be flexible. The second part of it is 2-3 year grants, right? They go pretty quick. Sometimes that first year, you know, even Heck is still trying to get the templates and the reporting stuff right. You know, you're kind of getting through it and you're ramping up, and then you got to maybe 14 months, 15 months just going, and then it's time to start ramping down on a 3-year schedule. So as soon as you see it's working, there's got to be another mechanism. We didn't apply for round 3, you know, but we weren't really there. We were still trying to capture data from the first year and a half when that second round came through. So I don't know if it was meant to overlap so you get a lot more applicants, but it didn't allow maybe some continuity of some best practices out there as well. You know, that's just an idea.
Awesome.
Joseph,
Yeah,
did you
yeah,
have
yeah.
anything to add?
And so, you know, so I look at it from a very, very high level perspective. So the more innovators we can host through our program, the more opportunities there'll be for students and individuals to get involved in the industry. And so with that said, you know, one way I think the industry will open up is that, and my only wish would be that if the FAA were to be able to provide kind of a solid, you know, regulatory guidance on opening up the industry to commercial civilian businesses. I think if they can do that, I believe there'll be more startups who will be innovating and integrating in this industry, and that will lead to more opportunities for you know, workforce development and increasing pathways to get from unemployed to employed.
Thank you. So I would like to open it up to my colleagues here with questions that you might have for our panelists.
On Joseph's last comment there, and just because I'm not as familiar with the industry, he gave the example of the FAA regulations that guide civilian commercial use. Could you give us a couple examples of how, as regulations decrease or ease up, whatever word you want to use, what new applications or types of jobs or type of work could that unleash, or like the industries we use drone in, or how we use them? Just some specific examples like that.
Yeah, I think in general, just having some guidelines as to how we integrate unmanned systems in the national airspace. I think if we have guidelines regarding that, that will open up many opportunities. Like Lindsay said, you know, there are innovations happening in UAS and its applications. They come at us every day, and there are things that we haven't even thought about, but many of them are limited because they just can't apply some of that innovation, you know, over, for example, delivery over densely populated areas, although that's happening in some places through waivers and so on. It's still not as commonplace as it needs to be for this industry to be kind of blow the doors open on this industry, which it will happen. I mean, it's not a matter of you know, if, it's a matter of when this happens. And I think we're, just waiting for FAA to give us some guidance on this so more innovation and integration can take place.
So with like the FAA rules and regulations, they have gotten more relaxed throughout the years, but a big one for us was unable to operate at night. And that was a big one for a while. Everyone was kind of waiting it for open up, and it never did. And then finally, we wrote an exemption to the FAA to be exempt from some of those rulings, and it got approved. But I mean, we were like waiting for years for that to open up. And night ops for ag spraying is kind of important. So since that opened up, we're getting a lot more acres done. We're able to spray some insecticides that have like a low tolerance for UV for UV exposure. So I mean, just stuff like that. It's really slow going, but it is opening up a little more. And then for us, when we have to register our aircrafts, we submit, and I mean, it's basically kind of like registering a car. It's just with the FAA. And just to register one of our drones, it took like 3 months for it to come back. So, FAA, if you're listening, we can do better. So, just little stuff like that would be nice to kind of button up and become a little faster.
And it's really interesting. Like I said, I look at this from a very high level perspective, but it does trickle down. It trickles down to businesses like Nathan, right? And we're all impacted by this. And we see the importance of having some type of solid regulatory guidelines. So accelerators like ours can operate all the way, to businesses like Nathan, who are doing very important work in the ag industry.
Okay. I have a couple of questions. One is just sort of level setting. Correct me if I'm wrong. I think the test site designation was 10 to 15 years ago when the 5 test sites were designated.
I believe
Does that sound
so.
right? Yeah. So it seems like a lot has happened in the last 10 to 15 years to get to where we are today. I hear what you're saying, that there's still like barriers, but do you think that will overcoming some of those barriers or releasing some of the restrictions will accelerate? Have we reached a point where that will start to happen more rapidly?
I believe so. I believe that, as far as the program is concerned, we measure that through the number of startup innovators who apply for our program. And consistently, as I said, we host 2 programs or 2 cohorts annually, and we consistently have between 30 and 40 innovators, startup founders applying for, 5 spots in each of those programs. I believe that should there be some really solid legislation and rule changes, making it easier to operate unmanned systems, I think our numbers will go up dramatically in terms of applicants.
That's great. Clarifying question about the degree and credential pathways. I know the student mentioned that he's on track for an associate's degree. Is there a short-term certificate or some stackable credentials that are coupled with an associate's degree? Is the associate's degree specifically in drone operation? I may have missed that point.
So yeah, the associate's degree itself is just a 2-year certificate, and that's pretty much it. As far as stackable things, I wouldn't say there would be anything additional to what that degree offers that he'd end up with after he graduates.
Okay, and so that degree it's a drone operator
Yes.
associate's degree. Okay.
Absolutely, unmanned aircraft systems, 2-year associate degree.
And are there, we heard the numbers about 30 to 40 innovators applying for 5 spots in the accelerator. What are you seeing in terms of interest in the degree pathway? Is recruitment, are there barriers to recruiting people into the program? Are you at capacity?
So there are definitely challenges when it comes to recruitment, I'd say. I say that for 2 reasons, awareness and perception, because it's a very niche and technical field. And being that we're in such a rural area, it's kind of hard for the younger generation to recognize that jobs like the UAS exist and that there are multiple sectors to it, right? There's cinematography and infrastructure and just surveying. It's a lot more than what you think. And being in a rural area, you can't really fathom that it's more to it. And then perception-wise, when they do hear it, they usually associate it with like the $20 quadcopter that you find at Walmart, right? Like you just play with toys. I even had like adults tell me that what I do is play with toys all day. And it's like, what, you know? So I'd say out of, you know, when it comes to challenges, yes, awareness being a bigger one and perception. In terms of keeping students though, what I found is that when you give them a clear line of path, like the classroom, the outside training and then internships, when you give them a clear path of direction, they tend to be more engaged and they stay a bit longer, right? That would be my answer to that.
What are some of the strategies that BMCC or any of the partners use to recruit and build awareness for the opportunity? Do you just count on people coming to BMCC to inquire about the opportunity, or is there other outreach strategies?
Yeah, so we've been fortunate that a lot of the outreach is brought to us, and this is primarily through like community connection, some industry employers, and just our local partnerships. All right, that being said, you know, our site lead tries to takes lead on following up and managing those relationships. An example of this would be the tribe, right? They source students that are interested in UAS careers. They send them to us, retrain them, and then they often go on to intern with the company's active accelerated program at the range, right? So a lot of our outreaches come to us through all the partnerships that we have.
That's great.
And again, we're really trying to focus on something new that's going to invigorate our community, and drones is one of those technologies. So yeah, Greg, and it's at every annual community picnic. We have a career fair for all the high schools to come out to the Tribal Governance Center and have lunch and learn about things at the tribe. Because again, we have all kinds of, we're a city, the tribes, most cities, so we have every Department of Natural Resources to education to science and engineering. You know, we're always, you know, needing employees as well. But so yeah, that's part of our grant, you know, is to outreach. You know, we connect with our tribal school, tribal high school. So yeah, and it's not hard for us to do. The hardest part is usually creating a cool flyer, right? You know what I mean? The deadline for the tribal newspaper, you know, but there's just a lot of good energy around this particular industry right now. And I haven't really seen it in my community since the casinos opened up for us back in the 90s, 95. It's like, okay, great. There's 500 different jobs there that you can do, you know, but that's wore off. People want to do their own things now. And again, Nathan, again, is an example of someone who can take an interest to being a successful business owner in a very short period of time, only because the timing's right. So again, in the partnerships, of course.
I'm really struck, just for the consortium, I'm struck by not just the connection to workforce expansion, but the business entrepreneurship, acceleration, economic impact component to this that I don't think we've heard in other spaces. And building on our conversation earlier about emerging and evolving occupations, workforce needs, education requirements, you'll have the coolest assignment, because last time you met, you got to see robots. Now you get to see drones. And I think to your point, like some of the themes that we're hearing are how do we talk about what the career opportunities are, the entrepreneurial opportunities in those spaces where it's really emerging and evolving, and putting something tangible to that is part of the challenge to grow interest. So thank you, and just some random thoughts from Jennifer.
I just wanted to check and see if any other questions, folks. Let's give our panel a round of applause and thank you so much. And now I turn it back to you.
Okay, so if you loved hearing about this, in a few minutes we're going on a tour. And as Jennifer said, this consortium has the best tours of all the consortiums, because as she said too, like last time we saw robots and this time we get to see drones. Like how awesome is that? So a plug to follow us. So I have a wrap-up slide here in a minute, but a number of you flew in bravely on 8-seater airplanes. I heard great stories about the view from the planes. Heard one sort of scary story, but that was the only one. But because you all flew in, or a number of you flew in, you also are without a vehicle. So we'll help you transport you up to the accelerator program. If you haven't met your fine shuttle services, we have Sarah and Stacy back there. Those are two of the drivers that we have that can help you find your way back to the hotel and to the drone program. There are likely other drivers here in our presence that would be willing to take a friend in their car as well. So Tammy Short is going to be here shortly, and she's going to guide us to exactly where we need to be. So any questions about next steps? Oh, and then the next, I know a number of you are leaving on the 3:20 flight. So we'll get up there, we'll do the tour, and you'll be exactly where you need to be to catch your flight. So it's going to be super convenient.
Yeah.
Any
Just to
questions
let
about
everybody know, I will not be at the accelerator on tour, but Cole Ricks from the test range will be taking everyone on the tour through the accelerator program, and be sure to ask any questions that you might have.
Okay, thank you, Joseph.
You're welcome.
Okay, so we'll be in good hands. Do you want to go to the last slide? So next steps for us. So we have a Q4 meeting scheduled for November 5th. It says location TBD, but I have thoughts. Like this consortium hasn't met at OIT yet, and OIT is awesome. The Wilsonville location, it's central, the tech is great. So I'm going to push for that location, and so tentatively we'll say OIT on the 5th. So as Jennifer outlined, we're going to do some opportunity mapping with some select occupations, which can be challenging for all the reasons we've just discussed. Like a lot of the occupations, it's hard to find data on because they're emerging. But I'll be touching base with you and talking to Amy and trying to figure out our next direction in that way. But we'll prioritize some occupations, use those as like test subjects to come out with some of this opportunity mapping, and then go forward. Next. Thank you, Ronan. So at the next meeting, we'll also talk about a strategic action plan and try to prioritize what we're going to do in the next fiscal year. There's a lot happening between the NVIDIA MOU and all the other things happening in the state. So we'll try to prioritize what we're going to do for the next year at our meeting. Maybe I'm going into the last, yeah. And so the last thing is, another thing we'll do at the next meeting. As you all know, Future Ready Oregon is in the last year of its existence. Is that too dramatic? Of the project, yeah. That sounded really dramatic. The consortium strategists, luckily, will stay on, but our wonderful grant admins and Ronan and Emily, their positions are finite. And so we're in the last year of that. And so we'd like to hear from you all. What do you want to know about the Future Ready projects? What learnings do we have? What do you want to take away from that? And so we'll talk about the full scope of the work, and what we can share with you before the project completely unwinds. So Jennifer, you look like you have something to say.
I would just add emphasis to the grant-funded project activities are entering their final year, which you even heard from our partners here in Pendleton. And so part of the investment was to learn about what works, connecting, expanding and diversifying the workforce, specifically in healthcare, manufacturing, and technology. And so either your last meeting or 2 meetings ago, we presented you the full portfolio of technology projects. If there are specific projects you would like to learn more about, or if there are approaches to education and training or supports for participants that you'd like to learn more about, we can continue to pull together panels or bring in specific project partnerships. So the strategists will be working with each of their consortium membership to identify what some of those things are that you'd like to be learning more about Q4 through Q3 of 2026. So limited opportunity on those project grant-funded project activities that we want to make sure we're taking advantage of.
Okay, thank you, Jennifer. Does anyone have any questions? If not, thank you so for coming out here and flying on the 8-seater or driving 4 hours or whatever it took to get you here. I appreciate it. I know I've heard from our partners here that they are happy to see you too. So thank you for making the effort to be here. And thank you for all the presenters for taking time to come here and spend time with us today. I really appreciate it.